The young lady opened her eyes to a loud cry that called her to wake up, and immediately felt alarm. She looked at the little girl, who, with pleading eyes, begged her to just open hers. The protagonist wondered if she was dreaming all this. Everything that was happening seemed like a memory from a past life, as if she was living the day immediately following her eternal sleep. Previously, the director of a local company, the third-generation son of a powerful conglomerate, had flirted with her. 3 weeks later, as the girl was trying to distance herself, a truck driver appeared to doze off at the wheel and crashed into their car. After this accident, she was reborn as the eldest daughter of Baron Delford and gradually began to remember her past life. She realized that Clare was unhappy, although now her status as the daughter of a baronial family sounded impressive and even proud. Life in the New World didn't give you a gold spoon in your hand, but a silver one wasn't bad either, even though the level of civilization was far inferior to the modern one. There were none of the former joys inherent in the old world, but she did not have to work every day either. That was the fate of the nobility. She imagined that she could live like this, without denying herself anything, for another 30 long years. Suddenly she heard someone calling her sister and asking if she was okay. The girl thought that Clare probably hated Eliza only because she was no longer an only child. Eliza's fair hair and blue eyes resembled the precious stones that Clare had envied since childhood, and so hostility was inevitable. Now the girl, wiping away tears, explained that she had called her loudly and was surprised why her sister had not woken up. The main character understood that this was a dream connected with the day when memories of a past life returned. When the young lady finally woke up, she hugged her sister, and she, crying, could not hide the tears of joy and fear. The blonde claimed that she thought her sister was already dead, and Clare realized that Eliza was now a child who needed to be taken care of. She also understood that now this child was left without parents, immersed in eternal sleep, and she had no reason to feel hatred. After some time, the young lady declared that she was alive, and someone replied that he understood this, but still wondered why she did not open her eyes. Then the young man addressed her by name, and the main character tried to understand what he meant. She turned around and realized that it was Sir Eric in front of her, asking if she was awake, and she was reaching out to him to make sure that this was reality. She wanted to check if it was a dream, and he asked her to take a deep breath. The young lady realized that everything that was happening was real, and screamed in surprise, jumping out of bed. However, Eric immediately wrapped a blanket around her, insisting that she cover herself. The girl was indignant because he himself was almost naked, and she found this illogical. However, she decided that there was something to cover up and noticed how the young man tensed, causing her surprise and slight shock. She tried to understand how this had happened and realized that it was Eric Klausner in front of her. He was a senior at the academy where Clare studied, and at the same time the Duke of the Klausner clan, while the young lady was only the daughter of a simple baron. Now she had no interest at all in handsome young men and directors. Eric looked like a cold northern aristocrat. He showed no interest in others, but he had a dislike for Clare, and the young lady realized that there had never been mutual understanding between them, and that quarrels had occurred 3 years ago. Her student years were just a memory, and the young lady realized that Clare was still very beautiful. She was sociable, and it seems that one day they had a few drinks together, deciding to just hang out. Later, they went up to the second floor to rest, and the young lady felt something special, although she vaguely remembered the details. She definitely liked it, and at that moment the guys asked if she had forgotten everything completely. She replied that she remembered some moments, to which the young man only nodded, understanding. The main character asked him what he was talking about, saying he'd been acting wild last night and was now playing the victim. He apologized, saying he shouldn't have drunk so much. She then declared that it would snow tomorrow. Eric was slightly surprised and asked what she was talking about, and Clare said that he apologized and last night was a mistake. The young man assured her that it wasn't intentional, and the main character said that she could say whatever she wanted, but the guilt still remained, and he could also apologize at dinner. The guy asked if it was a mistake, and Clare asked if he wanted to put the blame on her. After this, the girl agreed, taking full blame for what happened. The young man wonders with interest whether she really wants to just forget everything that happened, to which the girl replies that there is no point in making a big deal out of it. He insists it's important and tries to figure out if they'll just pretend nothing happened now. Clare wonders why he keeps asking such strange and, in her opinion, unnecessary questions. She asks herself, if it wasn't a mistake, what does he really want? And are they ready to take responsibility for what's happening? Eric is silent for a moment, and then quietly remarks that Clare comes from a family of common defenses, a southern line, and their position is incomparable to the Klausner family. He explains that she will have to come to terms with the fact that they are on different levels of society, and this is inevitable. Clare realizes that Eric's words reflect a harsh reality. The Klausner family is one of the 3 most powerful families in the country. Her own origins in a family of commoners means that she is not their equal, and even the head butler of the estate holds a title higher than a baron. The young lady understands this, but still believes that being born into any family is already a great success, even if it is simple. She admits that she is shocked by the truth she heard and understands that even if the emperor declares them one family, she will be against it. The girl wonders what the young man might say in response, but realizes that in this situation, he has nothing to say. Clare thanks him politely, but firmly refuses, realizing that any fleeting desire should not determine her choice. She admits to herself that she doesn't really feel joy about what's happening and understands that not everyone will ask her to marry him. Clare realizes that they are both to blame for what happened, so she wants to forget everything and advises the Duke to do the same. Eric asks if she wants to say that he is just a man who took her innocence and is not responsible for it. The main character wonders who said that it was her first time, and immediately realizes that she has said too much. She understands that chastity before marriage is valued in any noble family, and that is why his reaction was so surprising. However, she was not lying, she was simply relying on her past life experience, after which she headed to the dressing room. There she notices an exquisite dress and asks if she can wear it. The young man agrees, claiming that this outfit was made for her. Clare admires the preparation and thinks that this dress costs more than her 3 evening gowns combined. She wonders if the outfit was prepared specifically for this occasion or if it is part of another owner, but decides not to dwell on guesses. The young lady takes the cloak and says that she needs a carriage, so she asks for a servant who can keep his mouth shut to be ready. Clare understands that she is not a mistress, but a future bride, and there is no point in worrying about misunderstandings. Eric carefully asks what will happen if she has a child, causing the girl to become slightly irritated. The main character believes that her relatives will be happy if a child is born from Duke Klausner and promises to contact him if this happens. The young man is surprised and asks if it's not obvious, to which Clare replies that it's better not to tell anyone yet. Eric reminds her that he is ready to take responsibility, and the girl understands that there is no point in arguing. After a while, the butler enters the room, and the Duke suggests calming down a bit and discussing the situation. Clare considers this unnecessary, admitting that she may not be entirely sane, but the Duke is confident in himself. The young lady bows and heads towards the carriage to go home, keeping her composure. Upon arrival, she hurries home and realizes that she will never drink so recklessly again. Upon entering the estate, the butler asks where she has been, to which Clare asks for a bath to be prepared and explains that she has not disappeared anywhere. The man expresses concern because he was very worried about her safety. Eric asks what happened to Miss Eliza, and Clare clarifies what exactly they are talking about. The butler explains that Miss returned early in the morning, and Clare asks where Martha was. The servant replies that Martha also returned in the morning, but it seems that the Miss ran away from her, and Clare understands the situation. Martha searched for the girl all night, and the main character wants to know what happened next. The butler says that the Miss returned, went into the bedroom, locked the door, and seemed to be crying. Clare knocked on her sister's room door, introduced herself, and asked her to open the door. The little girl hesitantly opened the door, took her sister's hand, and Clare asked what happened. The sister pulled her into the room and closed the door, causing surprise in the young lady. Clare notices that it's not just the dirt and feels uneasy. She sees her sister start to cry and tries to understand what happened. Clare realizes that yesterday was Eliza's graduation from the academy and her first outing into high society. Clare traveled to the capital to attend a social event and was keen to capture the moments with her sister in photographs. The girl understood that she could not accompany Eliza because a noisy party with friends was being prepared in the dorm, which lasted until late at night. Now the younger sister is confused and asks what she should do because she witnessed something she shouldn't have seen. Clare leans towards Eliza, trying to understand what they are talking about, and the blonde falls to the floor and repeats that she can't tell anything. The main character hugs her sister, calming her down, and asks her not to be afraid, assuring her that together they will deal with any situation. The lady with red hair asks Eliza what exactly she saw, but she replies that revealing the secret could put everyone in danger. The blonde adds that if the information becomes known, everyone could end up in an eternal sleep, and she urgently needs to escape. Clare thinks it might be related to Eliza's boyfriend, realizing her sister had a romantic relationship. A few moments ago, the main character tried to find out who he was, and Eliza only said that he was a man of high status. The young lady asks if her sister trusts her completely, and is told that Clare will be the first to know the truth if everything is safe. Clare realizes that in another family, Eliza might have been punished for having an affair, but she's already 20, and a relationship with her lover doesn't seem strange. The main character believes that the young man will not act rashly and asks Eliza to promise 2 things. One of the promises was to take care of herself. Another was to ask for help if needed, because Clare doubted that the story with the dorm was true. Yesterday, the blonde was incredibly beautiful, probably wanting to spend time with her lover, and Clare thinks that fear of her parents may be unnecessary. But Eliza categorically denies this, adding that her young man has already fallen into eternal sleep. A little later, Clare leaves her sister's room, and the butler asks if everything is all right with the lady, to which the main character replies that she is sleeping and something scared her yesterday. Clare asks for some warm water to wipe her face, but the bath can wait. The main thing is a change of clothes for Eliza. She begins packing, which surprises the butler, but Clare explains that they will go home when they are ready. The girl understands that the young man is of high status, and that Eliza's cape is not inferior in quality and cost to the dress given to her by Klausner. The main character thinks about what a backward and strange society she finds herself in. She realizes that if high-ranking aristocrats fall into eternal sleep, the Baron's village daughters will quickly sort everything out. And last night, something terrible happened. Looking at her sister, Clare wonders what could have happened to them and how it will all end. Soon the maid expresses surprise, and Clare says that Martha must understand the seriousness of the situation. She insists that the woman help Eliza recover and explains that no one should know about this story. The main character repeats that the secret will remain between them and asks if Martha understands this. The maid confirms that she will never disgrace their honor, and Clare understands that she will need to discuss everything with the other maids. The girl realizes that what happened will leave a deep mark on her heart, but if the danger is real, she needs to leave the capital as quickly as possible. A little later, the young lady is already lying down in bed, thinking about what happened. When Clare enters the room, she remembers the Duke, but realizes that now is not the time to focus on her own mistakes. At this time, the Duke is in his room, thinking whether he did the right thing, and realizes that some might have noticed the presence of the girl in his bedroom. It won't do him any harm, but the young lady risks finding herself at the center of a scandal. The guy wonders what to worry about, since Clare is unlikely to be very worried about such things. He wonders why Clare is so angry, since last night they both did something crazy, albeit suddenly. Usually the lady with red hair doesn't like him, and when she gets angry, she becomes overly polite, which is always noticeable. Then Clare called him Duke, her eyes burning with anger, and he turned to the butler with a question about news. Someone else entered the room, asking how things were going as Eric was waiting for news. The boy learns that this is his stepmother, Duchess Louise Klausner. Although she was a stepmother, Eric never felt any hostility towards her, understanding that with the appearance of a new wife, his father's family responsibilities would change. The young man was aware of his rights and duty, and also understood that the Duchess's place could not be left empty. Louise always treated him with kindness, and he responded with respect, maintaining a calm relationship. Now Eric asks what the woman wants, and she says that he spent a lot of time at home, but didn't even come down to eat. She is surprised that he is up so early, and he explains that he was busy with work, and the woman asks if this is the kind of work that is done in the bedroom and not in the office. The young man replies that it is personal, to which the woman agrees, realizing that Eric is already a grown man. He says that there are things he cannot discuss even with her, and mentions that Pavel purchased a dress that was on display at Edelweiss. Eric emphasizes once again that this is a personal matter, and he is not yet ready to discuss it. The woman tries to add something, but the guy interrupts her, promising to tell her when he finds a solution. The blonde realizes that almost 3 days have passed, and Clare has probably fallen behind the events. Suddenly, the butler screams, attracting the master's attention, and he asks what happened. A man reports that the crown prince has been found dead, his body discovered in the Modril forest. It looked like a deliberate attack. The bodies of 2 servants lay nearby, and the captain of the escort was missing, and the search for him continues. At that moment, the blonde announced that he was going to the palace, and the servant only nodded in agreement. His mother grabbed his sleeve, trying to find out if he was okay, but the boy just quietly walked away, suggesting they discuss it later. 5 years later, a blonde-haired, blue-eyed boy is traveling with Clare. He turns to his aunt and admits that he cannot see the sky, as they are in the capital of Rommel, the Aran Empire. The boy remarks that the buildings here are incredibly tall, and Clare realizes that for her, having grown up in Delford, this is no less impressive. At this time, the nanny tells the boy that the lady is tired and now he can show her the city. The young man notes that the clouds are almost invisible behind the houses. At this moment, Clare remembers that 5 years ago, 9 months after their departure from the capital, an important event occurred. Eliza gave birth to a son, and Clare turned to her sister, reminding her that she had promised to be careful. The sister just smiled and said that let everything take its course, because the happiness was too great to be contained. For Clare, this was a reason to be a little worried about her sister, although she understood that Eliza was happy. The girl recalled how those around her condemned Eliza for crossing the line before marriage, considering her unhappy. Some advised her to behave with restraint and not to disgrace the family, but Eliza did not let these words break her. She firmly decided that she would love her son, because he was dear to her heart and nothing would change that. Clare reminded her sister to take care of herself and that her life did not end after meeting her son. Eliza replied that her life had now become fuller and more meaningful, after which the young lady smiled, seeing her happiness. Clare asked if her sister would be able to take care of her only nephew and was convinced that the girl would love the child with all her heart. Even when Eliza went into eternal sleep, leaving her son alive, Clare could not and did not want to feel hostility towards him. In a past life, her friend was proud of hundreds of photographs of his nephew showing his joy. Clare thought that this was not her child, but he was beautiful in his own right because his mother was incredibly beautiful. However, right now her thoughts are focused on something else. She is heading to the capital to make Elliot her heir. After some time, the young lady realizes that the capital is full of difficulties and problems that need to be solved. The protection of the noble lineage and the preservation of the spouses rights are necessary, and the adoption procedure is extremely complicated, so there is almost no choice but to go herself. In any case, Elliot would still have to attend the academy, and there was no way to get away from it forever. Clare tries to remain optimistic, believing that everything will work out since 5 years have already passed, the assassins were long since found dead, connections with Delford were lost, and the case had reached a dead end. The effects of the Crown Prince's eternal slumber were expected to gradually fade away. The boy turns to Martha and asks her to pay attention to the clouds, as if he could buy them to see them closer. Clare understands that this will be a good experience for the child, and Martha notes that Rothenburg is one of the largest cities in the world. Later, they stop at the Innenhof Hotel, where the man declares that he is glad to see them and considers the meeting an honor. He is also the hotel manager, but the young man immediately runs up to him, causing the man to be slightly surprised. Clare coaches the boy on what to say when he accidentally bumps into someone to maintain decorum. The boy apologizes, and the man replies that everything is fine and nothing was damaged by the light blow to his head. Clare asks to accept the apology, noting that the child is still small, but still needs to behave more modestly and carefully. The man bows, and the young man looks around and apologizes to the Baroness, after which someone assures that everything is fine and the manager is not from their family. He is polite, but at heart he is far from a true gentleman, and it is better not to be frivolous if you do not want trouble. This is Roger Carson, the owner of a weaving house. The man is surprised by the young man's behavior, then says that their luggage will be left on the first floor. The guests are probably tired after the journey, so they prepare the bath, and Clare thanks the butler and asks Martha to take Elliot inside. When the maid comes in, the red-haired boy kisses Clare's hand and remembers how long it has been since they last saw each other. Clare asks if he has anything urgent to do, but the guy just asks if he can't just say hello for no reason, which irritates her a little. He claims that if he doesn't even greet the aristocrat who owns 51% of the company, he will become an insignificant merchant. Clare agrees that this is fair, and the importance of respecting her is obvious. The guy claims that the Baroness is valued in their company, and Clare recalls that 4 years ago the weaving industry changed a lot. Machines had improved, but employees were still installing kickbacks and stencils back in the days when people were prejudiced. The Delford family's agent inspected the weaving mill and was impressed by the high quality of the products. The fabrics were produced faster and without defects, and Roger urgently went to Delford. There he saw an almost fully automated machine that could be operated by one person. The guy, looking at this, realized that he needed to immediately prepare a contract. The young ladies knew he wouldn't miss the chance, and Clare decided she wasn't going to sell his company's textiles. She wants to be an investor and have a share of the production, without wanting to take over the existing market. The machine is capable of producing a huge quantity of high-quality products, which will allow the company to create a new market rather than invade an old one. Clare dreamed of making textiles accessible to ordinary people. Soon they found themselves in the workshop, where all the processes began. The young man assured that the new machines had already been ordered, and that highly qualified personnel would not be required to operate them. They had already found stencil makers, but they spared no expense on the other workers to ensure the final product was flawless. The boy added that there was now a train station nearby, and Clare realized that Delford was in the heart of the cotton-growing regions. There was a town nearby with a developed spinning industry, and the young man asked whether the lady had thought about such things from the very beginning. Clare replied that she had chosen the location for the railway station as a child, when she was not yet 10 years old. She admitted that she couldn't stand the smell of trains, after which she jokingly asked if it seemed strange. The young man was surprised that at that age she already understood how important it was to control transport capacity. He asked what exactly the young lady was talking about, and she replied that they had done a great job, and also asked how much they could invest in the business. Clare reminded them that she was their primary partner and asked if they were afraid of losing her. He replied that perhaps she had misunderstood him, as he genuinely liked her. Because of her knowledge and insight, Clare said he was flattering, although she knew what he really meant. She thought it wasn't a sign of genius, she just grew up in a world of developed capitalism and saw things differently. Despite everything, the business flourished, and after 4 years of operation they had almost completely consolidated their position. They had almost monopolized the textile market, and the young man was wondering if she was going to marry Mr. Sherwood. Clare confirmed, and the guy told her to choose better than him, accompanying his words with a slight smile. He hinted that if a commoner husband was important to her, then he would also doing this with a touch of humor. Later they entered the room of another man, Delford's legal advisor named Gray Sherwood. This man was the one Clare was planning to marry. The red-haired boy thought it was a formality. He thought about the registration of young Mr. Elliot and added to himself that he would like to take part in this process. The butler at this time was only angry, believing that someone dared to flirt with the Baroness. The red-haired guy claimed that a man who knew Clare well was perfect for this. Clare wondered what people said about sitting down and then wanting to lie down, and she wondered if he planned to make a nobleman with her help. The guy understood that his earnings allowed him to be a lover, and if the lady didn't mind, a groom. However, Clare interrupted him, asking what kind of alliance he was talking about, and Gray Sherwood considered the conversation over. He covered Clare with his body and thanked the young man for seeing the Baroness off. Clare looked at him, remembered something, and said that she needed to rest, and they would talk about the trade union later. She said goodbye to Roger and wondered where Martha was, because they should have arrived by now. The butler reported that the young gentleman was already asleep, and Clare wondered why their conflict had occurred, because she had had a premonition of it. Roger was angry at this time and cursed Gray Sherwood. The Duke of Klausner's estate reported that the Duchess spent more than 1.5 million gold coins on outfits in a month. However, his master asked him not to exaggerate, because any lady's clothes are her pride, and men should not discuss her expenses. The young man reminded that he asked her to leave her alone and not to interfere in her affairs. But the servant cried out that only 9 months had passed, and the Duchess had already spent more than 10 million, and the sum was approaching 20. The guy understood that with that kind of money he could buy a small territory with a title, but now he was more interested in the question, what was the problem? And did this really have any impact on the budget, given that the ducal family owned the largest coal mine in the empire, with rich deposits of metals and oil? Without industrial development, the northern lands were considered wastelands, although treasures were literally underfoot. The region was currently developing faster than any other in the country, and the servant assured that this had no impact on the budget. If the Duchess had simply spent money on dresses and jewelry, the young man would not have said a word. But she resold them through the merchants of the Marquis of Belf, who was part of her family. This was where the problem lay, so the man wondered if something should be done. Didn't he say he wouldn't interfere? The boy recalled that last year, the Marquis family had run up debts by starting a textile business, but it had failed. The largest loan was 50 million, and when the guy paid it off, he considered the matter closed. Louise asked him to fulfill his duty as the head of the family and support the Marquis, and he decided to do so. That instead of a one-time assistance, it's better to invest in the business. A talentless person, forced to sell off territories, to pay off debts, would be better off sitting quietly and doing nothing. The boy no longer thought about them, but he understood that the Marquis's situation would worsen. The servants turned to the master, and the blond man only sighed, realizing how many problems lay before him. He believed that he would add nothing, and even if the Duchess sold things to help the family, he would not interfere. But one of the men argued that this was unfair to competitors. The Duke asked which merchants he was talking about. One servant replied that yes, and was surprised that the master knew, asking whether they would still ignore the situation. The guy put down his pen and said that the Marquis would be trampled anyway, so there was no need to worry about the woman spending on clothes and jewelry. This is the Duchess's personal business, and competitors have no right to interfere. The young man understood that he was betting on who would win, but the finance minister was right. The situation was unfair. He would like to apologize if the opponent was someone else and perhaps even send an official letter. But he knew exactly who the real competitor was and had no intention of interfering. He was destined to forget this woman and never find the strength to apologize to her for the past. Eric realized that completely new machines were now being used for weaving, and this progress could not be ignored. He reflected on how quickly people's thinking changes, how no one can keep up with the times, and how careful and precise work is becoming a rarity. And against this backdrop, he realized that Clare's products were being distributed more widely than ever. The young man recognized that the girl adored money, and this had always remained an important aspect of her character. He remembered that she had once said that she was different from him, a man born with a golden spoon in his mouth, because she seemed to have a silver one, or something like that. But at the same time, the young man understood that he had not the slightest desire to look for a woman who harbored such strong hatred towards him. 5 years ago, on the day he had to rush to the palace due to the crown prince's sudden illness, he wrote her a letter but never got around to sending it. The young man thought that perhaps it was even better this way. The letter would have given rise to a lot of rumors, and nothing good would have come of it. If he had decided to propose to her then, there is a high probability that she would have simply run away, unable to bear the surprise. Although there were still questions that he couldn't find answers to. If the girl hated him so much, why was her behavior so strange that night? For a long time he could not figure out her actions, until after some time he left the office and realized that it was time to discuss the situation with his mother. At that moment someone cried out, addressing the Duke with urgent news. The blonde demanded that the servant calm down and explain what had happened, although he could barely catch his breath. The servant cried out that the woman had returned and that he had accidentally encountered her near the hotel. The man, stunned, asked who they were talking about. The servant clarified that this was indeed the same lady, reminding her that the gentleman had bought her an expensive dress 5 years ago. He also reported that the girl had a child, and the Duke again asked what they were talking about. The servant explained that the boy was about 4 years old and was a handsome young gentleman. With hair like a golden thread, he questioned the hotel staff, but it turned out that the girl was not yet married. Recently, the maids were whispering about what had happened, one asking for details and another saying that the boy had been caught stealing and reading forbidden books. One maid asked how it all happened and whether there would be a punishment, while the other only added details of what was happening. It didn't look like anyone was angry with the boy, since he had confessed to what he had done, and the man believed that smart people should be useful. He asked the boy how he felt about the idea of getting a decent education, seeing it as the key to his future. That boy turned out to be Gray Sherwood, Claire's childhood friend who always ran errands for her. As he grew older, he was introduced as a student who had received a scholarship from Baron Delford, thus opening up new opportunities. Gray soon graduated from the Imperial Academy with honors and was able to build a career and gain a reputation in the capital. Clare informed her parents that she still had a lot of business to attend to in the capital and needed a reliable lawyer to manage the Delford family affairs. The man asked if the boy would be able to cope with the responsibilities since he was from a village, and country people rarely cope with city life. Clare assured him that he would develop, improving 30 times faster than anyone expected. She also believed that the more famous Gray became, the more profitable it would be for the Delford family, who supported him. The girl understood that industrial development led to an increase in contracts, and that more and more lawyers appeared every year. Everyone was striving to be the best, but Gray won, which even Clare did not expect, and now he was considered an outstanding lawyer. After Clare's parents fell into eternal sleep, he continued to provide support, not forgetting old commitments. At the funeral, the girl read a sheet of paper with a reminder that he would never forget the help given. After the death of his parents, Clare Gray decided to return to Delford to be close and support his family. But Clare asked him to stay in the capital because she needed her own man on the spot to resolve urgent issues. Gray followed her advice and became the owner of one of the most famous legal agencies in the empire. However, his work as an advisor to Baroness Delford remained a priority for him, despite his own business. Now Clare was considering taking a short-term contract and watching Gray with interest. He, noticing her gaze, asked if there was something on her face, and the girl only smiled and said that she was just curious. Her interest was in why he was not yet married, and whether he was afraid of ever being tied down by marriage. There were probably a lot of girls following him, but Gray kept silent, and Clare believed that there was always a partner in the aristocracy, and did not want to intrude on their privacy. He interrupted her thoughts, noting that such conversations were inappropriate when discussing a marriage contract. The girl noted the oddity of him drawing up a contract and presenting it to his fiancé, but the man assured her that any conditions could be added. Clare smiled and realized that she now understood more clearly what the Baron felt when such loyalty was shown to him. She decided to leave things as they were, and Gray only asked if she would like to consult with another lawyer. The girl replied that she believed in his honesty and understood that marriage remained a formality, with no desire to keep the man on a leash. In that era, marriage for aristocrats was simply a union of two families, and Clare never understood the meaning of such unions. After all, true love requires the protection of every feeling. The girl understood that this would most likely not happen to her, because once she opened her heart, she would have to deal with the consequences. But continuing to live with a silver spoon in her mouth seemed natural to her, and she saw nothing wrong with it. She didn't consider herself guilty of being born a noblewoman. Despite her noble blood, she dreamed of a simple life, like her ancestors. The young lady recalled the blonde man's words about the need to take responsibility for one's actions. Grace spoke to her, asking if she was listening, and she mentally returned to the familiar face, trying to understand why it was remembered. Although the guy looked attractive, her imagination added to his actions, and his behavior seemed disgusting. Gray assured her that he could come later if the lady needed time, but the girl insisted that she was afraid for him and preferred to decide everything now. They both understood they needed to think it over carefully again. The guy didn't have to waste his energy on this formal union if he didn't want to. The young man, however, insisted that he was the best fit, and the heroine was forced to admit that he was right. The marriage was designed to legally establish Elliot as the heir to the Delford family, and her understanding of the situation was clear. Since the union brought together families of similar status, Grey's candidacy seemed the most suitable. She needed a man who could understand her decisions, respect her choices, and care for the Delford family as much as she did. He was also expected to be a worthy stepfather to Elliot, with an impeccable reputation. All in all, Grey was the perfect fit. He met all the requirements, but the girl did not want to ruin his life for the sake of formalities. She also understood that Grey wanted to repay the debt to the Baron and was ready to provide the family with any assistance. At this time, the young man reminded that the Baron always advised against overly expressing gratitude. He emphasized that it was thanks to his family's help that he had risen so high and now wanted to do everything he could to repay the debt. The heroine understood that her father had indeed given him a chance, but everything else was his doing. All of Grey's successes were the result of his tenacity and persistence, which worried the young lady. She was worried that the contract was unfair. She received all the privileges and could break the union at any time. Grey reminded them that this decision was important, and it was better to give each other time to think it over. The girl stated that she was asking for time, not for herself, but for him, so that he could make his own decision. She was not against the marriage, since she remained a noblewoman, although she bore the title of Baroness. The young man then explained that this was not the only issue and took out a small box, after which he opened its contents. He placed the ring in front of the lady and asked if he could call her by her name if they became husband and wife. The main character peered at the ring, about to address Grey, but at that moment there was a knock at the door. The voice said that he had an urgent message, and the girl told her to come in. The young man handed over the letter, noting that he had been told that no response was required. The lady saw that the letter was from the Duke and wondered about the point of secrecy, since his subordinates knew everything. When she opened the letter and read the contents, she was shocked. The text made her doubt the sanity of the addressee. The letter stated that the Duke would arrive in half an hour and the lady should be ready. At this time, the Duke was already riding in his carriage, discussing with his companions whether it was possible to stop. His companion answered in the negative, apologized, and called Eric His Highness. The blonde only explained that he was not a member of the imperial family, and the servant apologized for the misunderstanding. The Duke asked whether the Baroness had really ordered that he not be allowed in, to which the servant confirmed. Immediately realizing his mistake, the servant corrected himself by saying that he had not received an order and did not know about the Duke's visit. Eric moved on, feeling that the girl sometimes hated him for no reason, and it reminded him of Clare. He understood that she had never been happy about their acquaintance, valuing only personal gain. The lady constantly changed her behavior. Sometimes she was kind, sometimes harsh and disgusted. If anyone had found out about their relationship 5 years ago, rumors would have instantly spread throughout the capital. Now, in the young man's opinion, everything should be calm, and the lady will no longer simply reject him. He also wondered if she would pretend they were strangers. And as the man continued on his way, a boy suddenly crashed into him. The nanny sternly reminded the young gentleman that playing in the living room was not allowed. The Duke looked at the boy, who apologized and bowed, and Eric calmly picked up the ball. The man asked the child's name, and he replied, quote, Elliot, adding that he was 4 years old. Elliot asked his uncle's name, and the Duke said his name was Eric, after which the boy asked to return the ball to him, because it was his favorite. Eric agreed and clarified whether he was the son of Baroness Delford. The young man was surprised to learn that the Duke knew his aunt, and confirmed this, asking how his uncle had guessed, since they had always said that he looked like his mother. The Duke explained that he had simply guessed, and Elliot asked if he was a guest. Eric warned the young gentleman that he should not detain the Baroness's guests. The boy said goodbye with a bow, noting that he was glad to meet his uncle. The Duke merely grinned, stroking the child's head, and continued on his way. In the corridor, he saw other aristocrats, and realized that the secret visit had not been entirely successful. He approached the butler and ordered him to be taken to the lady. The girl sighed, but assured herself that everything would be fine and she would not run away. Although she did run away once, it wasn't because of Eric. She remembered their conversation 5 years ago well and wondered if he should worry. The lady decided that there was little cause for concern, except for a few problems. The man attracted her not only by his appearance but also by his character, although the difference in their family status created difficulties. He could have been a special person for her, but the difference in their backgrounds and the attitude of society complicated everything. She understood that their status imposed strict rules, and that girls often faced prejudice and unfounded ridicule, and Clare did not believe that she could exist peacefully in such an atmosphere. The girl remembered the Duke's words about how he should set an example for others by demonstrating his actions and position. The young lady realized that this was precisely the reason for the Duke's behavior. At that moment, someone turned to Clare, asking if the situation was worrying her. Clare clarified, asking if he meant her nerves, and Gray asked if it had anything to do with the Duke's obligations. Together with the Marquis of Belf, the Duke's holdings are considered the second most important in the empire after the capital territories. Moreover, their weaving business is struggling in the north precisely because of these circumstances, and Clare calmly noted that it was all understandable. She also stated that it was unimportant, since the Duke belonged to pure-blooded aristocracy, and for her it mattered. Clare couldn't understand why these people were so concerned about money and constantly bumping into each other, and Gray wondered if that was really the case. The main character confirmed that yes, their disputes were hindering the development of business in the territories, and it seemed to her that the needs of their subjects should be more important to aristocrats. Gray remarked that he thought the two were only casual acquaintances, but it seemed like their connection was much deeper. Clare replied that they were indeed close and knew each other well, which was confirmed by many years of communication. They attended the same academy, had the same teachers, and Clare understood this as a sign of their long-standing union. Their relationship was much deeper than it might seem to others, at least until the event that happened 5 years ago. Now it was already the past, and the young lady wondered why Gray had arrived at this particular moment. She asked him to stand quietly nearby, feeling that it would be extremely awkward if the Duke spoke about that incident at Sherwood. At this time, a blonde man entered the room, turning his attention to Clare, who was interested in what could have happened, noting his angry appearance. He, however, only asked whether she had any idea what had happened or whether she intended to continue to pretend that nothing had happened. Clare demanded an explanation first, because they hadn't seen each other for 5 years, and she couldn't read other people's minds. She understood that Eric usually behaved with restraint, like a typical northern aristocrat with a reputation for being cold and disciplined. They had argued before, but this was the first time the girl saw his anger so clearly and openly. The young man asked if she was the boy's aunt, and Clare tried to understand what he was talking about. The Duke stated that no matter how they sometimes treated each other, he always considered her a responsible woman. He added that he could not have imagined that she would be so irresponsible towards her own child. Gray stood between them and apologized for interfering, clarifying that the guy had mixed something up. The Duke asked who he was, and Gray bowed, introducing himself as Gray Sherwood. He also explained that he was the legal consultant for the Delford family, which displeased the blonde. Eric stated that such issues were not being discussed for now, and suggested that Gray stand aside. However, Gray clarified that he was not just a consultant, which prompted another question from the Duke. The Duke wondered if he was a member of the Delford family, and Clare knew that it was dangerous to discuss this in front of the Duke, because they could soon become one family. She asked Gray not to interfere, and he wanted to object, but the girl calmed him down, assuring him that everything would be fine. Gray nodded and bowed, and Clare turned to the Duke, claiming that he had probably misunderstood. She explained that Elliot was her nephew, her sister's son. The Duke insisted that the girl look at the boy's face, claiming that then everything would become clear, and accused her of lying. Clare replied that the child had golden hair and blue eyes, and she was not lying because he got them from his sister. The Duke noted that this was not the only issue. He was sure that the boy was his son, and asked Clare to stop making excuses. Clare cried out that she was not making excuses, but wanted to understand whether he considered her to have influenced the child, making him think that she was his aunt, and not his mother. The Duke assured her that he was not accusing her of anything, but was only asking her to acknowledge the child as her son. Clare was shocked, believing that if this was his child, Eric had become the most vile person by seducing her young sister after graduating from the academy. She was outraged that someone could do this to her sister, and Gray cried out that he didn't do it. The young lady reminded him that her sister had given life to Elliot, and if the boy was truly his, then he had done this to her. The Duke declared that Clare was very much mistaken, but the girl wondered if he was going to threaten her. He explained that Elliot could become the next Duke if he were recognized as his son and included in the 5th line of heirs. Clare emphasized that this was her nephew and that he would become the Baron of the Delford family, so Eric should stop his statements and leave. He turned to Clare again, but she only lifted the hem of her dress, and the man noted that she could not leave him so easily. He insisted that he couldn't leave the child and deserved to know his real parents, and Clare suggested that he first provide evidence and demonstrate his capabilities and influence. After this, the Duke put his hand over his face and declared he would return. After he left, Clare admitted that this man was driving her crazy. She realized that 5 years had passed and was surprised at how difficult it was to agree with her even once. Clare also understood that Elliot was not her son, and it would take about 10 days to verify this. The girl would simply like to have a genetic test, but modern society has not yet reached that level of medicine. Therefore, the young lady was confident that she would make him apologize the next time they met. At this time, Gray asked Clare if everything was okay, and the girl answered in the affirmative. The guy carefully handed her a handkerchief, assuring her that her face was slightly red, after which the young lady thanked him and noted that it was actually a little hot. Gray noted that it seemed his conflict with the Duke had not yet been resolved. The lady, however, said that he should cool off a bit, as they had both acted too impulsively. She couldn't resist asking if the guy had heard everything. Gray replied that the screams were so loud it was impossible not to hear. The main character felt a surge of embarrassment thinking about what had happened, but the guy assured her that it didn't matter to him at all. The young lady tried to understand what exactly he was talking about, and Gray explained that he was referring to her previous relationships and who her lovers had been. He also admitted that he didn't want to ruin their important moment with a fight, so he'd come another time. The lady seemed to be in a serious mood, and he suggested she take a little rest. The main character wanted to stop him from leaving, but Gray was already heading for the door, and she realized that if she admitted that they were not lovers, it would look like an excuse, raising even more questions. So it could be said that they were lovers, although this was not true, and the lady decided not to go into explanations. The young lady sat down in her chair, took a deep breath, and covered her face with her hands, as if trying to collect her thoughts and calm down. She silently asked Eliza to give her the strength to cope with what she had experienced. After a while, the lady was already sitting at the table, ready to continue the day. The nanny reminded her that the girl was going to dinner with Gray, and the young lady felt at a loss, not knowing how to explain everything without unnecessary words. The woman asked what had happened and explained that the Duke had come to see her. The lady was surprised that the nanny already knew everything, but she merely smiled, insisting that everything had been discussed off-screen. After that, she looked at the boy and wondered if he could be a link to Lady Eliza. The main character sternly replied that it was impossible. The nanny warned her not to be left alone with this man, as the consequences could be unpredictable. Clare said confidently that he wasn't that dangerous at all, and wondered why she should feel guilty if he started it and she simply had no words. The woman approached the young gentleman with a request to allow her to wipe his face, showing care and attention. The young lady asked the boy if he liked the food, to which he replied that it was tastier than at home, making her smile. Clare couldn't help but smile, but as she looked at the boy, she realized how much he resembled the Duke, something she hadn't noticed before. She wondered who Eliza's lover was, but she couldn't fully answer it, feeling a confusion in her thoughts. Most likely it was some nobleman from Rommel. On the day of the Crown Prince's tragic death, many young aristocrats of Royale suffered. The girl's boyfriend was probably also part of this circle, because even if he was a servant, his status was not low. He had to be at least a count, possibly a friend of the Crown Prince, and Liza was taking a great risk by being around him. No matter how much she looked, they really did look alike, and it was clear that the main character did not give birth to this guy. There could be no misunderstandings, but the situation with the Duke remained complex and required caution. If her father isn't Eric, then perhaps it's the prince who's no longer alive. The Duke's mother was an imperial princess. The Duke and the Crown Prince were cousins, and meanwhile the boy's stepmother was sitting at the table with other women, participating in the conversation. One of the guests noticed the woman's new ring, deep blue and unusually clear, and asked who dared to give such a gift to an unmarried lady. The woman simply asked who would dare to present such an exquisite gift, and emphasized that this was a rarity for an unmarried lady. Another guest asked if the fabrics were from a new weaving house, as they have been very popular lately and making the patterns by hand takes a lot of time. The girl's friend advised her to remain calm and not interfere in the conversation, so as not to attract unnecessary attention. The Duchess thought it was all about that damned weaving house again, and soon someone was saying that with a little effort, they could drive the competition out of Bamberg. The woman recalled that similar promises had been made 2 years ago and asked how much longer she would have to wait for results. The man asked her if she was comfortable admitting this, since if she asked the Duke, the outcome might be different. She quickly replied that she was not. The woman noted that it was more complicated than simply taking money, and Eric would never waste his energy developing the territory. The man asked why he acted that way when addressing his mother, but the woman replied that the boy didn't know him well. Eric is a reasonable and calm person who never acts under the influence of emotions and does not give up if someone opposes him. These short nobles had no idea that Eric's restraint was the only thing keeping Eris from throwing them out of the hall. Soon another young woman approaches the table, asking Eris's mother if she has heard of the newly opened weaving house. Many do not understand Eris's true choice, and sometimes it is better to trust her gaze than a cold, soulless factory product. Another lady confirms these words and adds that the truth is that, looking at such an elegant dress, it is impossible not to feel a little envy. One of those present claims that to acquire such an outfit, one would have to wait several months, and aristocrats must be graceful and skillfully hide their emotions in front of high-ranking nobles. The Duchess only smiles after these words, and the blonde turns to Eris's mother with a request to try the freshly baked cookies. The taste of this delicacy not only mimics the visual impression, but also amazes the woman so much that she immediately takes one in her hands. The woman understands that she usually does not have much love for children, but if asked who is the most beautiful noble woman of the empire, she would have no doubt in her answer. Almost everyone will name Eris Schneider, and even if she is not as beautiful as in her best years, her popularity among the aristocracy is beyond doubt. The woman admits that Eris has a special charm, and Count Schneider's family has always stood out among noble circles. Eris's family lineage on her mother's side is fallen nobility, and she is now faced with the task of choosing the right bride for Eric. Eric has a cousin, Princess Bettina, but such marriages are now being avoided, so Eris's choice seems quite acceptable. Her reputation and beauty are as important as her noble birth, making Eris a worthy candidate for the role of wife for Eric. The families have been friends for a long time, but Eric himself has no interest in such issues and is unlikely to be against the chosen decision. He will agree with any choice Eris makes, but he will be uncomfortable handing over the ducal house to someone else, which makes the moment especially delicate. It was time for Eris to fulfill her maternal duty, and the young man, although somewhat naive, would certainly listen to her. The Count's daughter does not dare to contradict her mother, and one of the women present notices what a magnificent diamond adorns the dress. Raising sons is not an easy task, and she hopes that the Duke will be able to find a suitable lady to start a family with. Another aristocrat adds that if you get married and have a child, you will have a harmonious and prosperous family. Nowadays, it has become common to connect destinies with dancers or singers, with whom fate brings them together by chance, and then there is also a child, which stuns the Duchess. One of the aristocrats asks if she has heard the rumors, assuming that the girl is already aware of what is happening. After this, she apologizes, admitting that she expressed herself incorrectly because she thought that the Duke would deal with the issue of the illegitimate child on his own. The woman just gets up from her seat, trying to pull herself together, and asks for forgiveness for the harshness of her words. She walks down the long corridor, pondering the possibility of Eric's illegitimate child. She finds it hard to believe, as it contradicts everything she knew about the Duke and leaves open the possibility of such a child coming from. She calls the maid, who immediately comes up and asks if her mistress called her, attentively awaiting orders. The woman, however, suddenly slaps her to emphasize the seriousness of the matter and asks if the maid knew about the child's existence. The maid, embarrassedly making excuses, declares that these are just rumors and the Duke could not have done such a thing, but receives another blow, stronger than the previous one. The woman demands that she stop talking nonsense and start finding out all the details related to the child. After this, the girl agrees to fulfill the mistress's demand, understanding the seriousness of the situation and the responsibility for the information. At this time, the Duke is in his office, remembering how he recently spoke to the young lady and realizes that he should not have raised his voice. He realizes that Clare has always had a way of throwing him off balance, but it's crucial to keep his emotions in check, despite the irritation. After all, there is a possibility that the boy could be his son, and the Duke understands that the girl will not lie without reason. He has already sent a secretary to Delford, but cannot wait quietly and asks one of the servants about the preferences of children at their age. The servant replies that when his son was 5 years old, he was especially fond of bronze soldiers, which aroused the Duke's interest. The man is surprised and thinks that it is better to choose the gift personally in order to present it with warmth and attention. He asks which toy store in Rothenburg is the best, to which he receives the answer that it is the Swan Queen's Nest. The Duke decides to go there, and the servant agrees to show the way, understanding the importance of the task. After some time, they drive up to the store and notice many children playing animatedly near the entrance. The Duke steps inside and immediately understands why this place is so popular with families, with children. Outside, there are well-kept flower gardens, and inside, the decor and atmosphere are stunning, living up to the store's reputation as a top-tier store. He notices something and turns around to see Elliot, which makes him slightly surprised. The young man immediately covers his mouth with his hand and shakes his head, and the servant advises the Duke to be quieter so as not to frighten the child. The Duke shows the boy that it will be quiet now, and he, smiling, relaxes. At that moment, another person approaches them. It turns out to be the main character, who wonders why the Duke is here and asks if he has seen Elliot. The man replies that, no, he didn't see him, and the boy, meanwhile, hides around the corner, watching what's happening. The girl asks where he could have gone, and Elliot, smiling, realizes that she hasn't found him yet. The young lady turns and begins searching for the boy again, and when she leaves, Elliot thanks his uncle for his concern. The Duke is surprised and asks if they are playing hide and seek, to which the boy replies that yes, that is exactly how their little game goes. The young man wonders whether the uncle is really his aunt's friend, and at the same time he wonders whether the man even has friends. He understands that we are talking about people of high status, perhaps princes or dukes, because only they can be considered equal. The man wonders whether he can call Clare his friend, despite the fact that she is younger in the academy and formally has a different status. The Duke agrees, and the boy is slightly surprised, realizing that it was not entirely right to tell each other lies. The man adds that he was hiding another friend, and the young man agrees because they weren't doing anything wrong by hiding, but were playing like children, as if they were playing hide and seek. The boy smiles, asking if they can be considered true friends, and the man honestly replies that he is not sure yet. Usually adults and children rarely become friends, but the young man is sure that his uncle deceived his aunt for his sake, and this changes the situation. The boy decides to trust the man, holding out his fist to him, and the Duke only sighs quietly in response. He slowly places his hand on the young man's fist, and after a little while the main character approaches them. She is surprised that the Duke is still around, and the man confirms this, arousing the young lady's interest and attention to him. The girl wonders if she can resolve the misunderstanding between them and how other people generally resolve such situations. The mood is quite light now, so talk about stupid duties and responsibilities is left aside for now. The young lady looks closely at the boy and understands that the real problem is that he does not have a child of his own to connect him with this world. She comes around the corner next to the Duke and announces that she has found Elliot, attracting the attention of everyone present. The young man is surprised by this and falls slightly, but quickly gets up with a smile, admitting that he was found anyway. The main character watches the boy, then the Duke, and tries to understand what they could have talked about without her presence. The man only explains that he cannot reveal the secrets his friend entrusted to him so as not to break his promise. The boy smiles, realizing that he was right to trust his uncle, and invites his aunt to join him in the game. The girl is surprised and wonders if it's time for him to give up his toys and limit himself to hide and seek, since he's already grown up. The boy objects that he still wants to play, and the girl hands him her wallet, offering to choose something from the store. She says that they are in a store and the boy can buy 2 things for 30 coins, choosing whichever he likes best. The Duke thinks this is too big a gift, but the boy is delighted and asks if it is really possible to choose 2 things at once. Clare confirms that yes and suggests that he count and pay for the purchases himself, seeing if he can handle it. The boy goes with the nanny, and the main character thanks the Duke for looking after Elliot and paying attention to him. She notes that it is important for a child when adults take him seriously, and the man agrees, understanding that this is natural. The young lady warns that if the Duke decides to continue their conversation in public, the consequences could be unpleasant. She jokingly adds that she would rather hit him over the head with a bag and even go to jail for treason if the conversation goes too far. The Duke remains silent, and the girl suggests that they take a walk so as not to stand still, and the man agrees, moving forward with her. As they walk down the street, she asks if anything important happened, hinting that he shouldn't talk about gifts for Elliot. The man replies that it is better not to return to the previous conversation so as not to say too much, and the young lady only laughs. She clarifies whether they can do without arguments so that rumors do not spread, as this could create new problems. The girl adds that she needs to take Elliot to church, have lunch, return to the hotel and work, keeping to a tight schedule. The Duke remarks that her schedule is indeed busy, and she remarks that his is probably even busier, wondering why he is here. Clare decides to drop the subject, and they continue walking, trying not to delve into past conversations. As she passes by, the main character notices that people are making way for the Duke, sensing his strong influence and authority. The guy notices that she is lost in thought and asks if everything is okay, interested in her thoughts. The girl explains that she feels more comfortable around older people, and the man replies that he has noticed this for a long time. However, she clarifies that she did not talk about comfort with him specifically, and he smiles, reminding her that she is always so frank. Clare explains that honesty helps avoid misunderstandings, and the man claims that he never said anything that could cause pain. The young lady wonders if this is really true, even when life is clouded by difficult circumstances, and the man suggests changing the subject to toy stores. She asks him if he likes it, and the man replies that it's not about him, but about the children, and then inquires about the level of sales in the store. Clare thinks sales are normal, but her husband notes that profit depends on the parents spending on decor and security, while the children just have fun. The girl is surprised how he realized that this was her store, and the man explains that such guesses only come to those who really know her habits. She realizes that running a store is her strong point, and although she sometimes lacks the strength and desire, she always sees things through to the end to avoid failing. The young woman notes that she wasn't the first to come up with the idea of keeping clients longer, and the man adds that this is especially important with children, since they usually don't have their own money. And here the children can buy their own toys, and the main character understands that this guy is right, because most ordinary families send their children to work at the age of 7. If a family has a shop or a plot of land, they will help with the chores. But the man insists that only the rich will come to such a store, and if they want to spend a lot of time there, sooner or later they will buy something. However, the main character replies that for her it is not a question of making money. She is simply trying several options at once, and some businesses are profitable, while others are not. This store operates almost at zero, but people love it, so it continues to develop. And even if their parents don't buy anything, some children work as apprentices or peddlers, saving up money and buying toys for themselves. The Duke then only sighs and says that the girl is like the owner of a casino, but the main characters do not claim that it is just a shop. The young man then claims that he is not only talking about him, and the girl asks if he knows about textile production as well. Elliot replies that he has received reports about the development of enterprises in his territories, and the main character says that it is true that their interests conflict, but she was just lucky. However, the Duke maintains that weaving houses are not created by luck alone, and her Naledi asserts that she also has a good imagination. She also understands that there is nothing surprising about this, because she can predict the future. The Romulan Empire does not match the historical structure of its previous world, and the climate and geography there are also different, but the hearts of people are the same everywhere. The girl also thinks about what will happen after the technology appears, as well as what demand will grow for, and so on. She is well aware of the events that have accompanied progress and knows which products and goods have ultimately stood the test of time, and which have fallen into disuse. Therefore, she simply needs to choose from the existing options, and she can be confident of success and know where her future development will lead. This includes budgeting, investing, and creating leverage. These are not new to her, because she came from the world of developed capitalism, and this is the failure of the fatherland. But it's not just about the ability to develop a business, because she is an aristocrat and one with good skills, and it doesn't matter whether she is a low-born southerner or not, but knowledge is knowledge. After all, she's not being threatened or intimidated, nor are they trying to take away her business, and the employees are quite obedient and diligent. The girl also wonders if such conditions are being created even for her, a baroness. How simple everything is for the nobles of Rommel, and how unfair this world is for ordinary people. After all, even for the two of them, the laws and principles of this society work differently. At this time, the Duke asks the young lady if she is angry with him again, but she replies that she is not angry with him either, because this is a problem of the reality surrounding them, which she cannot solve. The young lady also claims that she knows the guy well and for quite a long time. The young lady also understands that it would not be surprising if their acquaintance ended in nothing. And if he simply treated her as a lower noblewoman and also ignored her, then she would think of him as a higher nobleman and would not get involved. But, on the other hand, even now it is difficult to explain who they are to each other. The guy then claims that he thought the girl was more careless, but when he found out about her affairs, he was very surprised. The protagonist replies that she hadn't planned on trying so hard, but she has a child to raise, and the money certainly wouldn't hurt. The girl also realizes that 5 years ago, when Eliza returned home frightened and in dirty clothes, the girl decided that she would make every effort to protect her family, and now she claims that she has no one to rely on, and that the higher-ups, twins, or more than one, always need money. The guy then asks the girl if she has ever thought about getting involved with him, but she says that it sounds like a huge stupidity. She also understands that she knows he can be relied upon, but the fewer people who know about the secret, the better. And he has a close relationship with the ruling family, and the emperor and empress are his relatives on his mother's side. Therefore, such a person cannot know the truth, and she does not want to drag him into this because she has enough misunderstandings with Elliot. At this time, the Duke turns to Clare, after which he approaches her and claims that he did not only mean Elliot. After all, he wanted to become her husband, and the guy asks if she never once thought that she could trust him. The young man also asks if she never once thought that she could trust him, and the young lady is only interested in what is wrong with him. Well, the guy asks a question in response and wonders if he really means nothing to her. But he thought so, that they were much closer than just strangers. The young lady then looked at him with a little surprise, but then he claims that even if it's true, the girl doesn't finish her sentence. How the guy takes her hand in his and kisses it, and also claims that she might have forgotten. But he does want to make her his. The main character is silent for a moment but wonders if he's talking about righting his wrongs with marriage again, and also asks how many more times she has to say that she doesn't need it. The young man then claims that he was mistaken when he called it not their night and that the girl misunderstood. After all, the problem was in the order of things because he had to propose to her first. The guy realizes that he was going to do it after graduation, but there was no chance, and the girl quickly took the diploma and ran away. He thought it was a hint of refusal, but if she gave him a chance, he wouldn't miss it again. The main character then looks at the other people watching them and asks him what he thinks he just did. The guy replies that the rumors won't stop anyway, and asks what he'll gain by trying to silence them for her sake, and whether he will get her hand or the child, but the main character answers that no. But then someone else runs up to them and claims that the aunt and uncle are kissing. The main character is then shocked, and then he moves away from the Duke altogether, but the boy only says once again that they kissed. The man who is carrying him on his back asks how decent people can engage in such foreplay. The main character claims that he misunderstood, but the boy claims that he saw everything. He then approaches the young lady and grabs her by the dress. He also shouts menacingly that this is his aunt. The main character then lifts the young man into her arms and says how heavy he is. And the guy with red hair then asks the boy if he wants his aunt to get married. The young man replies that this is not the case, and the main character claims that she loves Elliot more than anyone in the world. The boy then says what a liar she is, and the young lady asks why, since it's true. The young man then claims that last time she said that she loved her mother most of all, and the girl replies that exactly then she loved him more than anyone else alive. The young man then says that he loves her too, and even more than his mother, after which the main character smiles. And they move on. Well, a little while later, when they already find themselves inside the building, then the main character stops and wonders how long the Duke will follow us. Then she turns to him and wants to tell him to leave them alone. But the man only asks, "Who is this guy?" The main character realizes he's talking about the red-haired boy. He also claims to be the owner of the weaving house. The guy then introduces himself and says his name is Roger Carson, and he's pleased to meet them. The blonde then looks at the guy and then shakes his hand and claims that he was told that the owner is very resourceful, but he didn't think he was that young. Roger claims the Duke may have heard comments about his father, and the young man also claims that he is the Baroness's errand boy, and he considers being chosen by her a blessing and will be grateful for the rest of his life. The main character then asks why Roger came and whether something urgent had happened. The guy then replies that he definitely is, and whispers something in her ear. The Duke only watches this coldly. Roger says a representative from a retail store in Bamberg came to see them. The main character then says that it's fine and understands that such things cannot be discussed in front of the Duke. She also understands that Bamberg is one of the largest cities in the Duchy of Klausner, and a battleground for Marquise Belf's Frog Guild and their weaving house. But the girl also understands that this isn't breaking news, and the red-haired boy claims he didn't mean to disturb the Baroness. Claire also thinks it's not important information and doesn't understand why the boy keeps whispering. The girl then claims that the merchant has come a long way and a meeting can be arranged tomorrow. But Roger says that they will do as she says and asks if they will go to the hotel now, to which the girl agrees. After which the main character also looks at the Duke and sees that he is looking coldly at Roger. Well, the young lady wonders how it all turned out this way. She also realizes that Roger sometimes says stupid things about marriage too. And these are just jokes, but if we are talking about Bamberg, then a conflict could arise with him, and she does not want to quarrel with the Duke. At this time, the blonde asks what happened, and the young lady thinks what she can do if he is asking for it himself. After which the girl replies that this is a personal matter, so it's better not to talk about it in front of strangers. At this time, the boy turns to his aunt and talks about toys, and the main character asks if he has already chosen one. The young man then answers yes, after which he points to one side and says what he has chosen. Those bandits. Roger then says they're soldiers, and the boy insists he wants to play with them. But the main character asks what she told him, and the young man claims that it was 2 toys. The guy also insists that it's the same set and she wants it. The main character asks how much it costs. The boy replies that it's 30 gold pieces, and the main character asks how long ago he learned to count to such numbers. The young man then also says that Uncle Roger bought it for him, and that this is something completely different. The red-haired boy claims he didn't know, and bought it because the boy had a sag. The main character then claims she told him not to buy him everything, and Roger replies that it wasn't very expensive. The Duke then also enters the conversation and claims that they are made to be bought for children. But the young lady claims that these toys were not for sale, and she also wanted any child to be able to come and play. Claire also understands that you can't buy everything you want, and that it's not about money. The young man is then only disappointed and almost cries, and the main character claims that she knows what she promised. But he can't allow this, because this place was made so that everyone could play together. But after this, the young man only cries out that he hates her and doesn't want anything else. The main character claims that they won't be able to take it home anyway, and asks how the boy is going to play with it alone. Roger then apologizes, and the young lady states that they will buy something else next time. She also turns to the Duke and tells him not to spoil the guy with expensive things either. Otherwise, she will become a bad person in the eyes of others. And the Duke asks how. Claire replies that she wouldn't think so. Well, what about the others? She doesn't want people talking, as if she were a swindler who was extorting money from him through the child. After which, the young lady begs for forgiveness. And he leaves, and the Duke watches her, after which the servant turns to him and asks if they are leaving too. But the man only tells the boy to call the store manager. The servant is a little surprised by this, and the Duke claims he's going to buy these toys. But the butler insists the lady asked for them. However, the Duke replies that he was worried because he did not know what gift to choose, and now he will buy whatever Elliot wants, after which the man tells the butler to call the hotel manager. He understands that he needs to make Elliot love him, at least more than Roger Carson, and Claire is right, because the rest of them will remain silent. But the guy thinks who cares, because when the girl becomes a duchess, everyone will shut up, and they'll beg for forgiveness on their knees. Rumors spread quickly, and that's even better. After all, he pretended to kiss her in front of the local newspaper workers. And this is the simplest strategy to victory. But you can't relax when it comes to Clare. The Duke at this time tells the boy to find information about Roger Carson, and the servant agrees. 6 months ago, Bamberg's fabric stores started having problems, but before that, everything was fine. The Duke also understands that their patterned fabrics were not only selling well, but were selling like hotcakes. In the Duchy of Klausner, this city occupies a leading position in terms of money turnover and wealth, and the townspeople also spent a lot and enriched the shopkeepers. But 6 months ago, Baron Belf's Fra Guild attempted to take over the city, and patterned fabrics began selling at ridiculous prices. It got to the point where plain fabrics became more expensive than patterned ones. And although the prices for other goods were approximately the same, people went to where patterned fabrics became cheaper. Other suppliers in fabrics tried to resist the Fra Guild, and even lowered the price for shops to almost cost, but they still could not compete with the reduced prices of the Fra Guild. Some shop owners gave in and abandoned their old suppliers and tried to negotiate with the Fra Guild, but they were turned down. One of them asked to reconsider the decision, but the girl claimed that she understood their feelings. However, he cannot lower the price for them, and so Roger sells almost at cost. The girl understands that they have significantly reduced production costs and increased the quantity of goods, but this does not mean that they are now simply collecting money from under their feet. After all, they need to pay both the cotton field workers and the weavers, so the final cost is not that cheap. And constantly lowering the price, as Baron Belf does, will not work, because he receives money from the duchy. Here they really are collecting coins under their feet, and the girl claims that they will not sell them fabrics cheaper, so that it wouldn't turn out that they bought from them for less than cost and sold them to the guild. The man then asks what she's talking about. The girl claims it's because it's already happening. She also thinks the situation is amusing, and that the guild is buying patterned fabrics from their weaving tome and selling them cheaper to other shops in the city. The price is very cheap, so the fabrics are sold outside of Bamberg, and, in fact, she buys back her own fabrics from the Fract Guild at a price lower than she sold them. And this is money out of nothing, and she also buys cheap fabrics from the guild in Bamberg and then sells them in other regions at high prices, and it seems their merchants still haven't understood that they are buying cheap and selling expensive. Their only goal is to get rid of them in Bamberg, and the girl understands that they think that with the lowest prices they can capture the entire market, but this will not happen. After all, the world is connected to railways, and they don't even see their value, but they still have to think about such various merchants as Hans. The girl then claims that it is not only a matter of competition, and she will think about selling more than just fabrics through him in order to increase profits. But the man asks if there is a chance that the Duke will help them, and the main character asks what he is talking about. Roger claims he made it clear the Duke had nothing to do with the matter, but the man insists he doesn't have to repeat himself, since he lives there and knows his master's character. It's just a pretty rude question. But the guy is wondering if the Duke is shrinking. If the mother of his child asks for help, the main character is then shocked, and the man wonders if this is true, because he read in the newspaper that it was the Duke and the Baroness. The red-haired boy only laughs after this, but then sends the man away, and he claims he wanted to tell him something important, but completely forgot. The merchant then asks him to wait, but Roger only tells the Baroness that they'll go. The main character then remains in the room alone and is silent for a while, after which she sighs heavily. A little while later, the girl reads a newspaper with headlines, asking who the real father of the boy with golden hair is, and whether the academy is really a place for love. The main character then thinks that she is lucky that in this time it takes 7 hours to draw a normal illustration, and it turns out not to be very detailed. The girl also understands that she doesn't know about the Duke, and that she was drawn abstractly, but the rumors still spread. After which the main character thinks that these are irresponsible bastards who are threatening. She's also glad that Elliot can't read the press yet, but it's only a matter of time. After which the young lady opens one of the chests of drawers and states that we need to hurry. She also recalls Gray claiming that he knew the young lady only wanted this marriage for the sake of appearances, but marriage was marriage, and he would be glad if the young lady went through with it. The girl understands that this is no problem, since she plans to get married anyway, and Gray is a good man. He's not just suitable, but also attractive. After which the young lady opens the box and wonders if the rumors will die down if they get married. Although this could become a reason for an even bigger scandal, and Gray will have nothing but problems. The main character also remembers how the Duke said that it was not their night that was a mistake, but the order of his actions. After which she realizes that nothing has changed from the fact that he said this, because she does not want to become the wife of Duke Klausner. And she doesn't want to be the Cinderella who seduced a high nobleman, and she also doesn't want the duchy to be swallowed up by Delford. And although she is not as proud of her lineage as other aristocrats, she does not want her family to become part of Klausner just because of marriage. The girl also claims that her work dragged on for 5 years longer than she wanted, and this worries her more than it pleases her. The young lady also looks at her ring and realizes that the guy knew the size of her finger. But this is not surprising, because everyone there knows that she will marry Gray, and probably someone helped him. Well, the girl also thinks that Elliot still stands out too much, and she is not sure that even a quickly played wedding will work, because the problem would not be so big if not for the Duke. Now, the main character also hears someone knocking on her room and telling that person to come in. Then the man apologizes to the Baroness and claims she has a guest. The main character, somewhat surprised, asks who it is, and the guy doesn't even know how to say, after which he claims that Madame Duchess Klausner. She said that if the lady doesn't show up right now, the young lady is even more surprised after this. A little while later, the girl approaches the reception area and sees this woman, and he realizes that she looks like a typical evil mother-in-law from a morning soap opera. But villains always appear in a beautiful form, in full splendor. After which the young lady comes to her table, and the woman realizes that the young lady looks pretty good, but she doesn't wear any jewelry at all. However, then she does see a ring on her hand, after which she asks if she is Lady Delford. And also the daughter of Baron Delford. The main character says she's mistaken, because she's a baroness, not a lady. But the woman says she doesn't care, because the girl is still just an ordinary southerner. She also understands that some pathetic girl from a baron's family is making her wait in a place where only commoners come. After which the brunette also says that the girl will still have her husband's title after the wedding, so let her be proud as much as she wants and she will pass it on to the heir if she gets it on time. And a young lady may not be ashamed that she got married at a marriageable age, but there's nothing to be happy about either. The Duchess also asks whether her poor relatives simply turned a blind eye to everything. After this, the main character only clenches her fists and understands that if you have patience, you can avoid a bad ending. After which, the young lady sits down opposite her, but the woman immediately insists that she didn't give permission to sit down and that it was so rude. But Clare insists that it was the Duchess who came to see her, and she is the hostess, and the woman is the guest. So the Duchess then asks if the girl has no manners at all, and what kind of behavior is she allowing herself. But the main character says that since the lady had come such a long way, she thought she was carrying something important. Clare also realizes that everything is just like in TV series. And the brunette then replies that, yes, what can you expect from a man who is not ashamed to have a child before marriage? Clare then realizes that all she needs is patience, but she doesn't think she can handle it. The brunette then waves her hand, and one of the maids places a bag of gold coins on the table. The protagonist asks what it is. The woman argues that an illegitimate child cannot be an heir, but this is also her son's responsibility, so let her consider this as support for his upbringing. And also let the young lady not think about any nonsense and not make a noise. And also raise the child in Delford. The Duchess also claims that at least the boy won't get hurt in this village. And the girl isn't even thinking of coming to the capital to cause trouble. Clare wonders if she's not even going to check anything. And what other village is she talking about? And does she even know what Delford is? Although compared to Rothenburg, it's certainly nothing but fields and factories. But this place can compete even with the Marquis of Belf, under the protection of Duke Klausner, and the girl also wonders if this woman even understands who she is talking to now. After which, the young lady hands over the bag of coins and claims that she doesn't think it's enough even for a down payment. The woman then asks what she's talking about. The young lady says it's just a down payment and asks if she's seriously considering paying her off with that much money. The brunette only gets angry and insists she said it was for the child. Well, the main character claims that she doesn't seem to understand at all how much it costs to support children, and that it's more of a bribe than help, and the woman doesn't want her to marry Eric. Granada then asks what she's talking about and whether this is really a bribe, and the main character insists that she should prepare at least triple the amount she'll receive if she becomes a duchess. After all, if she refuses such a title and remains a single mother with an illegitimate child, the Duchess then screams in shock, asking what she was talking about, and the young lady states that it seems the woman has spent about 10 million of her family's gold this year, and judging by what she wears, another 5 million is needed to maintain her dignity. And she also spends 15 million a year, and for 10 years of marriage it will be 150 million, and then she expects to receive about 500 million. After this, the brunette only gets angry and asks how the girl dares to say such a thing. But the young lady merely asks the madam if her blood pressure has spiked, and she looks rather shady. The woman then merely exclaims, "What a devil the girl is, and how dares she count the duchy's money? And also, is it really possible to hope that she will become a duchess?" Well, the young lady then asks why not. After all, Eric had been waiting for her for 5 years, but after meeting Madame, it became clear why he was looking for a wife. And Duke Klausner lives a good life, but he constantly has to worry about Madame, and he came to her because he could not stand it anymore. The woman then just jumps up from her seat and screams, "How dare the girl say such a thing?" The young lady then understands that she is a victim there and closes her eyes, and also thinks whether he adores her too much. But she still won't escape. Well, then someone tells Mom not to move, and then knocks the tea out of her hands. It turns out to be the Duke with the boy, and their woman then looks at her son in shock. There's also a baby there, talking to his aunt. Journalists are already thinking up new headlines for their newspapers. One of these will be the Duchess, trying to bribe the Baroness. And does she really think that everything can be solved with money? The next headline will be about whom the Duke will choose, his mother or his wife, and whether the stepmother has remained a stranger to him. After all, she is a woman who steals the family's money, and the Duke's treasures flow into the Duchess's family. The blonde man tells his mother that he asked her not to interfere, and the woman doesn't even know what to say to that. But the main character claims that now is not the time for this, after which she approaches the guy. And she asks if his hand is okay, as it's very red. The Duke replies that it's not as bad as it looks, and he didn't know it would bother the girl. as everything is fine. But the main character then only turns to one of the servants and tells him to bring cold water, to which he agrees. The Duke at this time gives the boy to Clare, after which he hugs him and claims that everything is fine. She's not angry, so let the young man not be afraid. At this point, a servant brings cold water. The Duke thanks him and then dips his hand in. Meanwhile, the maids help the Duchess wipe the remains of tea from her dress, and the woman at this time is shocked to realize that they are not particularly close, but he knew how to behave around her, and now he suddenly tossed the teacup in her direction. The woman also recalls what she and Clare had talked about and wonders if the guy had heard everything. Now the blonde man simply reiterates that he warned the woman not to interfere in his personal life. However, the Duchess insists that she is, in fact, his mother, and he asks if he really looks down on her because she is not his own. And this is not some simple problem, but the wedding of the Duke of the Klausner family. After this, the young man only remains silent and looks at the main character, who will possess Elliot. After which the young lady understands what is going on and gives the boy to the manager and tells him to take him to his room, to which the man agrees. Meanwhile, the Duke turns to his mother and asserts that her points are not required when it comes to the wedding of the head of the family. And he is not an irresponsible man who will abandon his woman and child, and if Clare agrees, he will marry her immediately. The woman then tries to object, but the guy only raises his hand, and the Duchess is shocked to realize that this guy has never shown her such disrespect. The guy then just approaches the young lady and extends his hand to her, after which the main character looks at her and sighs, and then he's all over her, and he says how lucky she was that he didn't get a scar and she's glad the guy's okay. The blonde then claims he's apologizing on behalf of the family for the problems they caused. The girl then understands that he is not the kind of person who will easily ask for forgiveness, after which she claims that the tea would only have gotten on her dress and would not have harmed her, but thanks him anyway. The Duke then asks if she will say anything more, and the main character asks if he will let her go. Clare also tells him not to even think about talking about the baby in such a place. She understands that people have eyes and ears everywhere. Also, any news will spread today, and the previous headlines have already had a big effect. This could harm Elliot, but he's lucky he can't read yet because he's too small, and he'll have to buy up every newspaper like that in Delford until the rumors die down. At this time, the guy claims that, of course, he understands everything, but the main character tells him to let her go. After all, she already has to go in today's schedule. Well, then the guy just kisses her hand, and the girl breaks off mid-sentence. After which she asks what he is doing, and asks if he really doesn't hear what she is saying. Well, the young man just looks at the ring that is on Clare's hand and remains silent, after which he takes it off completely. The main character then asks him in shock what he's doing, and the guy asks if she really likes the ring, to which she replies that it's none of his business. The Duke then simply puts the ring in his pocket and claims that it was on his wedding ring finger, which is a problem. And he missed the most important step. The main character then tells him to wait and not do it, but the guy just takes the ring off his pinky. Then she asks why, and she told her mother she wasn't against it, and the guy asks if she really thinks he wouldn't dare. Clare asks if that's even something to joke about. But the guy claims that he hasn't prepared the ring, so while he's putting it on, their main character is shocked and claims that it's a family typo and everything will only get worse. The young man also says that she can refuse, but he is still obliged to do everything right, after which he gets down on one knee, and he puts the young lady's ring on her. The girl then looks at all this in shock, and the Duke asks, will she marry him? Everyone is watching and congratulating them, and asking the lady to say yes. Then someone else congratulates Baroness Delford, and the main character wonders if even the hotel manager is in favor of this marriage. After which, she claims that she is going to go crazy, but the guy says that if she wants to get married, it's better to spread rumors that he's the one who's been hitting on her. Clare insists he's already done that, and using the family glove to propose is going too far. After which, the young lady asks if he's completely crazy and if he even realizes what people will think. He doesn't respond that he doesn't understand why she's unhappy, since she herself complained about rumors even though there was no proposal. The girl understands that he's right, and the young man then claims that he committed a great stupidity 5 years ago, but it was deliberate. And this is not a joke, because Klausner will belong to her, and he himself will put it into the hands of the young lady. But the main character asks, what if she suddenly gets angry and starts selling the Duke's property left and right? And the guy replies that she won't do that, because he takes care of things that belong to her. The main character then wonders why he's smiling like that. The guy only moves closer to her face and then kisses her. A short time later, one of the maids claims she never would have thought the Duke had a child. Another says that he is not a little boy, and such things happen, but a proposal is a different matter, and she heard that he even used the family seal to propose to the Baroness in front of a crowd. Her interlocutor then asks what difference it makes to them, since even if a duchess appears, their duties will still not change much. Another one of them says that it is true, but at that very moment the Duke's mother runs down the corridor and calls for Maria. The girl then approaches the lady and asks how the meeting went, but she merely throws her headdress at her, after which she screams that she simply asked to find out about the illegitimate child. The girl then apologizes, and the woman begins to smash the estate's storage facilities and screams who this Baroness is and how she knows how and how much money she spends. The woman also asks if the girl showed the accounting records to anyone, and the maid replies that it was not her, and she would not dare. The Duchess then turns to the other one and asks if it was really her, but the brunette only wonders how a simple servant could know about Madame's expenses. After this, the woman only cries out in despair. Who did this then? Then someone else comes into the room and says that Duchess Louise seems to be having some kind of problem. And when the woman turns around, she sees a young man there. He is the third son of Count Krozik. And the Count is a relative of Duke Ernest, the head of one of the Empire's most powerful families. Louise was friends with this handsome young man, and for her he was the best, noble, and kind consultant, not a lover. He never crossed the line, and now they're heading down the hallway. The guy claims the newspapers were full of unfounded rumors, so he went to the lady, but she seemed angry. The woman then claims she didn't expect the guy to come and feels a little embarrassed. The young man merely claims that the latest news seems to have made her nervous. The geologist claims it's all because of that ram. She's a southerner, Arden, and Eric went too far. The guy then claims that he thinks that the academy students were not very surprised by this, and he had already heard similar rumors back then, since the matter concerned the Grand Duke. And the Baroness was not particularly popular, and he also often saw her communicating with the Duke. If the Duke raised his voice with anyone, it was only with her, and she was not afraid to argue with him on equal terms. That's why he remembered her, but there was nothing else to worry about, because everything about her was surprisingly normal. She had decent grades and a decent reputation, and people said she could be self-centered with those close to her. No one understood why the Duke hung out with her, but now the boy realizes he was wrong. After which he claims that this girl is the owner of a new weaving house, and the Duchess is shocked. The boy also understands how astonishing it is that a simple baron's family could have amassed such a fortune, and it's no problem for him that the new Duchess Louise and Baron Belf would clash. It was a battle within the duchy. But what's really worrying is that the Baroness is a noble woman of Aran, and 3 generations ago the Northern Empire of Romo and the Southern Kingdom of Aran. They were united by a national marriage through the law of succession, and the child of Rommel and Aran became the heir to the throne of the new state. After the crown prince was plunged into eternal sleep, the child of the former empress was placed in eternal sleep. The next in line to the throne was the emperor's eldest sister, Duchess Victoria, but her age currently prevents her from doing so. Then came Prince Linus, who is the son of the current empress, but there was a problem with the law of succession. The Duke was in 4th place because he was the biological son of the second princess, and if he marries the Baroness, their child will rise very high in the ranking of heirs. There will be a lot of debate about what is more important to respect, the priority of heirs or the law of inheritance. Her Majesty must have been very worried, and Louise had no idea that Johann Krozik's mistress was the Empress. At this time, the Duke enters the hotel, and the manager greets him and also states that everything is prepared as he said. But the guy then asks if the Baroness hasn't forbidden it. The manager replies that she's their most honored guest and they should believe it, but the hotel doesn't belong to her. The man also understands that this guy will still become her husband. After which, he also claims that over the past 5 years, the hotel has only hired those who can keep their mouths shut, and that more than one person always watches their children. The man, when he says that this is a great job, then goes into one of the rooms where Elliot is playing. When he looks at this, he only smiles and sighs, and the boy, seeing his uncle, immediately turns to him. After which he immediately throws down his toy sword and runs to the Duke, after which he kisses him on the cheek. And he thanks her. The man understands that caring for a child is very difficult, and he never considered children cute before. And he's also interested in whether the guy will love the child that he and Clare will have. The Duke also wonders whether the young man hugs him with such a smile because of his innocence, or because of the difference in his upbringing. But the man then says he didn't buy this toy just for him. He also understands that Clare said she wanted to give this set to all children. So he bought it and donated it to the hotel to make a play area for everyone. At least legally, he asked for a similar set to be made and sent to Delford. Well, he hasn't arrived yet, so everything's fine. The boy then claims he knows it's not just for him, and the Duke asks if Clare is angry. The young man replies that no, and she only stabbed, after which he shows how the girl did it. The boy then asks if the man has seen her and also offers to go to her. But the Duke replies that he hasn't, and that he has come to see the boy. After which he only says that the uncle better not lie, but the man insists that it is true. And Elliot wonders if he didn't say that he loved her, and the boy also asks if he is even going to marry her. The Duke understands that last time the young man was angry because of this, and now he asks if the boy is against it. To which he replies that no, and he likes everything, after which the Duke smiles. He also asks if the young man would like to give him something tasty to eat. The young man then asks how his aunt is, and the man insists that he explained that he came to see him. But Elliot claims he was told he shouldn't go with anyone offering treats. The Duke then insists they're not leaving the hotel and will call a nanny. The boy asks if this is true, and asks if he can have some hot chocolate. The Duke insists that he can, if Clare allows it, to which the boy replies that they'll ask Martha. After which the man takes the boy in his arms and says that then they can go. A little while later, the two arrive on the floor where the nanny is supposed to be, but there they see Gray. The boy then looks at the Duke of this man's tone, after which he tells his uncle to let him go because he will go by March, and the young man runs into the room where she should be. And when the Duke is alone with Gray, he asks if he'd like to explain himself. The boy also understands that a consultant is a consultant. But this guy received the Baron's patronage and since then has been helping Delford a lot, and although he often sees Clare, is also just a worker. However, the Duke wonders if the girl thinks the same. Meanwhile, Gray insists he has something to say, and the Duke acted like a scoundrel. The blonde asks what he's talking about, and Gray insists he deliberately started the rumors. To make things difficult for Clare, the Duke only asks if the guy calls all his clients by name, and he replies that this matter is only between him and Clare, unlike the problem that the Duke is creating. But the blonde replies that this is also their personal matter. But Gray argues that if it was personal, then why did he go to the publishing house? And yesterday he visited 6 publishing houses to make sure, and they were asked not to mention Elliot, and also not to criticize the Baroness. The man claims he didn't ask them to write anything specific, he just wanted to make sure the child wouldn't be harmed, but Gray confirms that even if he went to such lengths, he could have kept them quiet. The Duke then gets angry and asks if the guy is really threatening him now as a lawyer, to which the guy replies that he is not, and as Clare's subordinate, and also as a person who wants to be Elliot's guardian. And he simply speaks the truth, and also knows that the Duke is one of the highest nobles. But the one who forces a girl to marry by attacking her weaknesses cannot be called a gentleman. The blonde replies that it's true, and that it's enough to play the gentleman. But Gray wonders if Clare is just prey for him. After this, Eric claims that this is not his business, but theirs and Clare's, and let the guy intervene if she needs to sue, but everything else is not for outsiders. Gray claims that this concerns him because it is impossible to court a woman until they solve this problem. Eric then asks what he is talking about, and Gray claims that he is different from him, after which silence falls between them, and the Duke then realizes that the ring on Clare's finger was indeed an engagement ring. And then he wasn't sure from whom she got it, but now he takes this ring out of his pocket. Then she throws it on the floor, and Gray watches in shock. The main character is in her room at this time. She looks at the ring that the Duke gave her and remembers how people said why the girl did not agree, and she is like a modern Cinderella. The girl also understands that they continue to talk about it, and they even leave it to her in armor. And now everyone is sure that she will not refuse him, and how can one refuse Duke Klausner himself? The Duke is not old and has not married before, so how can one not marry such a young, handsome man? The main character understands she didn't want this wedding, but she can't explain it to anyone else, and she's confused. Afterwards, she becomes angry and wonders if there's any difference between news and gossip. At this time, Roger turns to her and says that if the lady is so angry, then why not sue them? He also blows his fan at the young lady, and she replies that his words make sense because Sherwood could sue them for a lot of money. Well, if she starts to react, they will cling even tighter, and the girl understands that this is a battle that cannot be won. A couple of newspapers might close, and then new headlines will appear asking whether the lady would have denied it so vehemently if it weren't true, and the truth would eventually come out. The scandal will become self-fulfilling, and people will be drawn into it. And the girl is not one to calm down easily, but then she remembers how her father said that one day she would have problems if she did not correct her hot temper. Now the young lady understands that it is difficult to deny his words now, even 11 years ago. During her first meeting with the Duke, if only she had simply silently admired the boy's handsome face, then all these problems wouldn't have arisen. The young man then claimed that she was too stubborn. And now the girl is wondering who to blame for this, and she herself is to blame, but then she didn't think so. So the young lady immediately jumps up from her seat and screams. She realizes the problem lies with the man proposing with his family seal, not with her. Roger then asks if the lady will agree to the Duke's proposal, and she replies that she should not do that. To which the young man replies that, of course, and asks why not, and the main character is a little surprised. But then he goes on to say that, simply put, she can't refuse. The girl also understands that she doesn't care what rumors are going on about her, whether they're true or not. They can gossip for hundreds of days, but it won't affect the Baroness, and this marriage scandal will sooner or later be forgotten. But the boy who looks like two peas in a pod with the Duke won't disappear anywhere, and will they feel safe if they hide in some rural area? But that's unlikely to happen. After all, you can fence off a child with a strong wall, but his existence will no longer be hidden and the danger will grow. And even the lower aristocrats are capable of earning a little money. But now power is given not so much by money as by pedigree. And if they link their fate with Klausner, then truly strong people will not take their eyes off her and Delford, including those who plunged Father Elliot into eternal sleep. The girl also understands that Klausner didn't know about this, but created a lot of problems with one blow. At this point, Roger offers to give the young lady a massage, but Noda replies that it is not necessary and that this is already beyond the bounds of simple flattery. Well, the guy claims that he would like to become the Baroness's lover and that Sherwood is still an option, but he can't win over the Duke. The young lady then asks why he wants to fight with men, and maybe the problem is in him, and the girl asks why doesn't he start fighting with his mind. The young man then asks why try if there is no chance of winning, and he is not a pervert who enjoys even defeats. Well, the young lady claims he sounds like someone who can win, and then says okay. And he suggests that they stop talking about nonsense, and also asks if he did a great job, to which the guy replies that he did just right. But at that very moment, someone turns to her ladyship and cries out that something bad has happened. The main character then asks what happened, and the maid, all dressed up, confirms it. The Duke Klausner and Sir Sherwood are fighting. The young lady then screams in shock, wondering what she's talking about, after which they immediately run down the corridor. When they get there, a young lady is leading a crying Elliot and two men. There's also a pile of broken dishes next to her. The boy immediately turns to his aunt. and he runs up to her and also cries, and the main character looking at the ear understands that they could not stop them. And the guys themselves didn't seem to be planning on calming down either, which made the main character angry. And he asks what this means, and whether they've really gone crazy. But the Duke only speaks, so that Clare throws this guy out of here, but the main character asks his lordship if he can stop talking complete nonsense, because she now wants to kill them both. Roger asks if this is how cultured people behave and scare little children, and it would have been better to throw down the gauntlet. The main character then tells them all to shut up, and then he turns to Marta and tells her to prepare the spare room because something needs to be done with their clothes. After which he turns to the Duke and says that unless he wants to insult her even more. The blonde then turns to the butler and insists that a shirt, vest, and tie are needed, and that it's enough to dust off the pants. The Duke also tells the lady to wait for him because he will return soon and they have a lot to talk about. After which the young lady tells him to go already, while Gray picks up the ring from the floor. The main character then turns to him and says the boy will go with her. The young man insists he's fine. But the girl claims that she is not from here, so let Gray shut up and follow her. When they enter one of the rooms, the servants are surprised, and Clare tells them to give them a change of clothes and also to sew on the buttons, to which they agree. The main character also says that there are robes there. Let the guy take one. The nanny, seeing Gray in shock, screams out what's wrong with him, but the guy tells her to be quieter because Elliot has already fallen asleep. One of the maids then tells the sir to take his robe and also take off his jacket, and she will straighten it out, to which the guy thanks her. At this time, the main character strokes the boy's head and then heads towards Gray, and she sees that he's wearing a shirt and pants. The same guy pulls on a robe, and Clare says everything's fine. After all, he's not naked. Gray asks how Elliot is feeling, and the girl replies that he's already fallen asleep. But he was a little scared, and it was still too early for the boy to see fights. Gray then apologized, and the main character just stretches out her hands to his face and also claims that he has a cut on his face, and hitting a man with glasses is like trying to put him to sleep forever. The guy then tells Clare not to exaggerate, but the young lady replies that it is not about the laws, and that this guy boxed and also studied wrestling from a young age. After all, this is a long-standing tradition among the nobles of Rommel. Gray then argues that he couldn't have simply run away, and the main character says that if he couldn't, then why didn't he hit back? After all, he could have evened out the Duke's nose, which was raised to the ceiling. Well, the young lady asks him why he didn't do it. Pony replies that he thought it would be stupid, but if she says no, then he could have just punched her once. The guy also says that the old bachelor lost his chance to marry right before his eyes, and even the Duke might have been a little sympathetic to his situation. The main character then claims that she hasn't told Gray anything yet, but he claims that she has already decided and asks if this is true, since Claire is a reasonable person, and he'll risk saying that he understands her completely. The guy also thinks that even though he's not the strongest in this world, well, he always tried to understand and accept her heart, as well as thoughts, and before he tried for the sake of the Baron, and now for her sake. And maybe if everything hadn't turned out exactly this way, and he hadn't decided to face his feelings, as well as his fears, in order to overcome them, then the ring would have sat in the drawer forever. Now the guy asks if the rumors haven't reached the stage where they can't be denied, and whether the lady marries him or not, they'll continue writing such nonsense. Claire says that's most likely, and the man says that Elliot might suffer from this, and then the lady would be better off taking matters into her own hands and making the right choice. The main character realizes that usually she would laugh and say that nothing can be done, but not now. After all, she is not so impudent that you ask the person who proposed to her to remain friends, and as soon as he agreed to the contract and gave her the ring, they became partners. Gray then says that the lady doesn't have to worry about the contract, but the girl claims that she is to blame. After which the guy claims that it was not signed by both parties, and their caution played into their hands. Then the main character apologizes to the guy, and he says that there is no need to apologize. After all, he himself agreed and understands that, at that moment, it was the best decision for Claire, and the marriage was needed first and foremost to protect Elliot, so let the lady not worry. The main character then tries to object, but the guy claims that he will always be faithful to her, and let the lady just not forget that he is also a part of Delford. After which, the main character extends her hand to him in response, and Gray kisses her. Claire says how old-fashioned this is, and that she needs not only reliable lawyers but also friends. To which the young man replies that he will always be on her ladyship's side. Then someone else knocks on the door, and the protagonist tells them to come in. Then a young man with red hair comes in and approaches Gray and says that even without glasses, a handsome man remains handsome, and their duke needs to see this. The protagonist then turns to Gray and tells him to demand the largest possible compensation. And she tells Roger to stop talking nonsense and ask if anything happened. The guy replies that nothing special, there was just a new issue, and the ink hadn't even dried yet. Mr. Sherwood's story has come to light. The red-haired boy also claims he didn't think they would be so reckless. And then there's a staff member waiting for him in the lobby. Gray sighs, after which they even ask for forgiveness. The main character asks if he is okay, and the guy claims that he will write to her tomorrow. The young lady then agrees, after which the young man leaves. Claire then sits down on the sofa, and Roger asks how the young gentleman is feeling. The girl replies that he was crying because he was scared, and that everything else is normal, and asks if Roger has anything else to say. He doesn't reply, saying he's simply curious about the current situation. The young lady then asks what he is talking about, and Payne does not answer that he would not like to hear her story from the newspapers. Claire asks if he wants to write about it himself and become popular, but the guy insists that the girl could at least believe in him a little. Then one of the butlers enters the room and also states that Duke Klausner will arrive soon. Roger then states that it looks like it's time for him to leave, after which he bows and leaves the room. A little while later, a young man with blonde hair comes in and says that the girl didn't run away. But the young lady wonders what he is talking about, since she lives there, and why should she do this? Claire also asks if he has anything else to say, but the Duke only asks if Elliot is okay. Claire replies that she's telling me about it and asks if she wants to apologize. However, he asks what he should apologize for, because he would do even more if it concerned her. The protagonist asks what he's talking about and insists that the Duke should apologize for the fight. The dear then says he should apologize and insists he shouldn't have scared Elliot like that, after which he also claims that he will do it personally a little later. But the girl insists that there are many more people in front of him, not just him. To which the Duke replies that yes, she needs to compensate the staff. Well, he doesn't mention the main game, but he understands who she means. After which the guy claims he has no intention of apologizing to her lawyer, and the girl seems completely unaware of the problem that has arisen between them. The main character then asks why she doesn't understand. The Duke replies that he started it. Claire says that can't be true, because Gray is a very tactful man, and Eric must have done something first. After which the Duke claims that this is why he says that the girl does not understand anything. And after all, two men propose to her at once, so what other reasons are needed for a fight? Claire claims that Gray is a victim because she suggested it to him. But the Duke argues that if the young lady thinks that he gave her the ring only because of this, then she is even more stupid. But she chose him anyway. The protagonist then offers to clarify and insists that she didn't choose him because she wanted to. The Duke then approaches her, and Claire claims that she will put him into eternal sleep if he kisses her. The girl also asks if he forgot that the conversation is not over, and the guy asks what else, and Claire claims that he did send a man to Delford and asks if he returned. But the guy received the information, and she asks if he will continue to pretend that he does not understand. Eric knows he doesn't think her sister's pregnancy is a definitive proof that she couldn't have a child, but he'd rather keep quiet. The girl then claims that it is all written on his face, and she says that it is good that he is so skillful in coming up with excuses used in the newspapers, and she cannot wait to see what else the Duke comes up with. And it is also natural that she would hide her child, and that is why he is upset. After all, she wouldn't continue to deny it if she was caught in a lie, and he knows. The blonde then insists that she's the kind of person who wouldn't just run away. The young lady then wonders why he's going so far, if he hated her before. after which the young lady claims it only happened once, and she asks if he wants to know why she ran away, because if so, then let him listen carefully, because she won't repeat it. The young lady then takes the framed photograph and hands it to the Duke. She claims it's her sister, and she looks more like her mother, and Clare looks more like her father, and they're related on their mother's side, originally from Rommel. The man says it's understandable, and the young lady insists the girl met her boyfriend at the academy. So he asks how the young lady did not interfere, and she replies that she was not planning to get married, and asks what she should have done, because it is quite normal, and all she knows about him is that he is the highest nobleman of the north. The Duke claims that he looks more like trash for now, and the young lady tells him to be careful with his words, and not just because he is her sister's boyfriend. After all, on the day when they went home, the girl returned in great shock, because she saw something that she shouldn't have. The Duke then asks if this is really true, and the girl replies that her boyfriend died that day, and then her sister gave birth to a baby, and it seems they had a covenant ceremony. Eric realizes there's no longer any need to figure out who he was. After all, it was most likely Prince Jared, who had fallen into eternal sleep, and he wasn't his real brother, but a Kazan. He was a quiet fellow who often ventured outside the palace incognito, and the guy won't be surprised if he hid his real identity from the girl, and it was Claire's younger sister. The protagonist claims she intends to take this secret to her grave, and the Duke says Clare should have come to him, but the girl replies that no, because that would put Elliot in danger, and he understands what she's talking about. Even the principal was plunged into eternal sleep. The Duke argues that the boy has a right to know, but the main character claims that he is not even 5 years old, and she will tell him when he becomes older. And she told him not out of concern for the boy, because the Duke is primarily concerned with his lineage and loyalty to the crown. But she is not going to give him up or give him away, because now he is her child. And she did not give him life, but raised him from birth and hoped that Eric would understand her feelings. The guy then agrees, and Clare asks if he knows what she wants to say, to which he replies yes. He understands that they can't be completely sure that their relationship remains a secret and that his family doesn't know, but there were several people who knew he was dating this girl. And the biggest proof is the child's appearance, so if they don't say that this is his illegitimate son, then Elliot will be in great danger. The main character then tells the Duke to sort this out, because he started all these problems, and she is not talking about recognizing the guy as Klausner's heir. It is better to keep the secret of his birth a secret and adopt him, because an adopted child has fewer rights to inheritance and will not cause problems for his biological children. And if they choose the right moment for a divorce, everything will be fine. The guy will then realize it's true, and then everyone will forget about this story. All the attention will be drawn to them, and all that will need to be done is to hide everything from Elliot. Some people may have doubts, but by that time the question of succession to the throne will be resolved, and the prince who was plunged into eternal sleep will be forgotten. We'll have to keep an eye on the boy until he's old enough to figure out the situation. The man now claims that the young lady is mistaken, and claims that she understands that she can harm him, but he promised to take responsibility. He started this mess himself, so let him clean it up. The Duke insists that's not what he's talking about and asks why she even started talking about divorce. Clare replies that he understands that the guy is not his son, and in order to solve the problem of inheritance. But the blonde just asks if he looks like a man who gets married only to get divorced. The girl replies that he proposed because he thought that Elliot was his son, and she understands how important his pedigree is to him. Eric replies that he agrees and that it's important to him, but protecting Clare and the baby is far more important. The young lady then argues that if he wanted to protect them, he should have done nothing. After all, isn't that what a true gentleman would do? However, the guy claims that the young lady never considered him that way, so he reacts accordingly. And then the young lady also tells him to better defend his honor. At that very moment, the guy approaches her, after which he kisses her. The main character is shocked by this, but the young man affirms it. He's already explained that he'll use any means necessary. The girl replies that such an attack makes him even less of a gentleman. The author says she has no one to tell her about it. After all, if she had come to him right away, Elliot would not have had to spend his childhood in such chaos. But the main character asks why this would be, and whether the guy would really recognize him as his own son. However, the Duke then shuts her mouth again with a kiss and says that the young lady talks too much. This guy is Jared's son, so he is related to the Klausner family and he is obliged to protect this boy. He is also very sweet, and since the girl considers him her son, he has no choice. The main character then claims that she cannot believe it and wonders where his opinion about blood purity has gone. Eric replies that he's not going anywhere, and that's why he hates her. The young man then kisses her again, and the main character realizes that everything around her has become even more confused. A woman is in the garden at this time cutting a flower. Someone says that Duke Klausner is late, but even if the previous Duke was unable to marry him, Louise needs to be more careful, and she thinks that the guy will fall in love with the daughter of Count Schneider. The woman then asks if the ladies are talking about heiress, but she is often called a canary because of her appearance. She is definitely a bird of prey. And he will break your finger if you dare to touch it, but the little bird remains just that, and no matter how many days you puff up, the canary will not become an album. But the same cannot be said about Lady Delford, and the woman has been watching her for quite some time and still cannot predict her next moves. This girl has a huge talent for making money, and if even Eric recognized her, then she is definitely capable. Now the woman says how crazy this world is. Or has the usual defense decided that Klausner's shiny golden spoon already belongs to her? Another woman says that it is true, but they can't do anything about it because men sometimes lose their heads when they fall in love. She also asks the lady if she has something on her mind, and the woman only asks if the Duke is really blinded by love. And also, if he laid hands on her sister, is it normal for Clare to raise someone else's child? The lady also wonders if they still haven't found out whose he is, and whether he is definitely not the Baroness's. The brunette replies that neither the servants nor the relatives confirmed it, and it is only clear that her sister was pregnant. And it also seems like something crazy was happening then. The lady then asks if the girl is sure, and she replies that many maids in the estate saw signs of violence on her, and that is true. The woman then thinks for a moment and realizes that she doesn't care what happened to the Baroness's sister, but she can't believe that Eric could do something like that. After which she claims that something is wrong, and it is hard for her to believe this version. And also the boy appears to me to be the Duke's son, but he looks incredibly like him, and first of all, the woman asks why he is in this marriage. The brunette says that she can, because the Baron has already fallen into eternal sleep, and marrying a simple young girl and the head of the family are two different things. Her mistress then says that it's okay to lose chastity before marriage, but why lie like that? But then the woman realizes that in her place, she certainly wouldn't do such a stupid thing, that is, marry a commoner without pedigree and power. After all, then the heir would be no better, and many of the Baroness's relatives have set their sights on the weaving house. And if the nephew becomes the heir, he will weed out most of them. If this is indeed the case, then he could be the Duke's son. The mother could be the Baroness, and someone from the collateral family may have impregnated the younger sister of the woman to whom the Duke proposed. This is far more plausible than dismissing their resemblance as a coincidence. And then the younger sister's child was simply thrown away, because that is the fate of most children born out of wedlock, especially if it happened as a result of violence. But this is not so important, because what is important is that Eric Klausner's child is a child with Aaron's genes, and this is another candidate for the throne. The brunette turns to her mistress and asks what they will do, and the woman replies that he is a mudblood and she does not plan to interfere for now. The woman also understands that there is a new candidate, but her position on the list will be low. And problems will begin if Eric promotes him, and this is not impossible because after all there is a law of inheritance. Moreover, the Duke is not an ordinary nobleman, and he will also receive a weaving house, and this is already a non-trivial problem. The southern regions have always relied on Rommel, a place with cheap labor that produces only food. Everything would have continued like this, but 5 years ago there was a surge in economic development and a tangled house. The fields that had once been a source of wheat were planted with cotton, and the new weaving house began to pay its workers and even farmers generously. The organization of the entire region began, and the workers who worked for pennies in Rommel They began to return to their homeland, and Clare Delford began to develop in an unexpected direction. She built factories on her own territory instead of looking for a place near cities and a workforce. The girl chose the area near a large river next to the railway, and a new city began to form around the industrial zone. From the very beginning, he was completely under the control of the Delford family. At first, the woman thought Clare had gone mad when she began getting into debt. But now everything has become obvious and the girl has a lot of debt, but the profit is even greater. Instead of demanding money from her, the creditors want to give even more, and she is a person who will not miss her chance. And now she has also gotten together with Klausner, and the woman wonders if it is really because of love. Well, it's still dangerous even if their love, a real girl, has only gone so far with the title of Baroness, and the woman wonders what will happen if she becomes a duchess. After which she suddenly cuts herself with scissors, and the maid immediately turns to Her Majesty with concern. But she says everything's fine, it's just a small scratch. Another maid then insists she'll bring some medicine and a bandage, and the woman claims that more and more people are now reporting that they can fall asleep because of anxiety. For example, Louise is not only facing the possible loss of her position as Duchess, but also a new weaving house, and she has so many reasons to worry. The brunette then claims that she thinks she will need a powerful sedative, and Her Highness understands that she has said enough, and Augusta will sort everything out. At this time, someone at the station claims that marrying a commoner is incomprehensible. How could anyone raise such a daughter? These men are Clare's cousin and uncle. The man understands that this time he will definitely teach her a lesson, even if he has to hit her, and for all sons, the closest male blood relative becomes the heir. So he had to become the Boron. But the man passed everything on to his daughter, and Clare has the skills to protect the family. Her uncle understands that he knows this perfectly well, and she also knows that her brother did everything to ensure that his little daughter became the heir, and that is why she did not want to force her to give up this position. But she had to marry Charles, that is his son, because only he could help the family become stronger. Their child will be a full heir, and Clare currently holds half the rights, so she can't go against their wishes. This was his decision as the head of the family, that is, as Delford and as the eldest. And no matter what kind of lawyer Grey becomes, he will have a past as just a person, and the girl dared to go to the capital alone to marry him. The man also thinks how she wants to make Elliot the heir, if it is not even clear who his father is, and this is unacceptable. But when the young lady's uncle moves on, he is suddenly surrounded by knights. Charles then asks what is going on, and James just gets angry and then hits these knights with a stick. And he says how rude this behavior is. The knight then asserts that his lordship is waiting for the man, so he should go. A little while later, they enter a luxurious mansion, and one of the servants claims that Sir James has arrived. The man then thinks that he doesn't know what this guy wants. But he is a nobleman of Erin, and it doesn't matter whether he is guilty or not. But then the man sees the Duke and is shocked. Eric recalls how the young lady told him about the distance between Delford, and the capital is big, but she still won't be able to shut her relatives up. The Duke then claimed he didn't think she'd be so rude to them, and the girl replied that she had no choice, since she wasn't the eldest son. The young man then reflected for a moment and realized that when his eldest son was gone, conflicts arose even between younger brothers, and Clare was a woman. So the girl told him to better understand this and be more careful if he was going to mention his family tree. Now the guy understands that he was not mistaken, after which he tells James that he is glad to meet him. The Duke also extends his hand and states that the invitation was a little unexpected, so he thanks for his understanding. The young lady's uncle says everything is fine, and her cousin claims it is a great honor for them. After this, they all sit down at the table, and the man thinks about what actually happened 5 years ago. And he treated Elliot well, after all. Meanwhile, the blonde insists that the holiday will be in 2 months, and James asks what holiday it is and apologizes, claiming that he doesn't quite understand. The Duke claims he's talking about a wedding ceremony. The young lady's uncle asks what kind of wedding it is, and the Duke replies that it is him and Clare, and asks if they don't know yet, because if so, then he will tell them personally. The young lady's uncle is thinking at this time what kind of wedding they are talking about, because he expected them to talk about Elliot. The Duke claims he proposed to Clare a few days ago, and Elliot will be added to their family tree. Charles immediately jumps up from his seat and asks his lordship if he is Elliot's biological father. The Duke then just looks menacingly at the young man, after which he realizes what he just blurted out. His father sits the boy down and asks them to forgive him. He also claims that it's a bit of a surprise for them, so they're not too shocked. Then the man also asks if the Duke will officially accept the guy, to which he replies that yes, after all, Elliot is his child, and asks if there are any problems with that. But the young lady's uncle is thinking at this time how the illegitimate son of a barony can become the heir to the duchy, and the Duke must marry a girl of his status and also raise an heir if he can have children. But then the man, in shock, comes up with something and understands what the problem is. And that is probably why the Duke makes the illegitimate child his heir and ignores who his mother is. The Duke then claims that he and Clare discussed at length what would be best for the child, so they will tell everyone that she gave birth to him. James says he understands and that it will be procedurally simpler and will not raise any questions about the succession. The young lady's uncle at this time realizes that he would never have thought that his nephew would become the heir to the duchy. The blonde then thanks them for their understanding and claims that his wedding with Clare will be simple for the closest people, and for now that's all he can say. And also, if he wants to know any details about the preparations, then he should ask the butler. Meanwhile, at the Innenhof's hotel, the main character thinks that a simple ceremony means there will be little noise. But she's not going to hide. She also just wants to have some kind of family banquet. Clare claimed a while ago that in order to dispel most of the rumors, they would have such a wedding that everyone would think that they were actually in love. The Duke then asked what she was talking about and said that it would not be a problem if they just shut everyone up, to which the girl replied that she simply had no words. The man then told her to buy whatever she wanted, and she could buy newspapers or even editorial offices. Clare thinks that this is not surprising, and that such thoughts really arise in a rich man on their own. After which, the young lady claimed that she had been thinking all the time about how to deal with the newspapers, and he was offering to buy them, and how stupid it was, because she still had a long way to go to become a real noblewoman. Eric simply tells her to simply buy them, and share only the most minute details, because then they'll gradually forget everything. The girl replies that ordinary people do, but it's better to bombard high society with details. And the blonde then asks, what for? And the girl replies that she will get newspapers, spreading rumors about her, and she doesn't like it, but she'll have to endure it, until they switch their attention from Elliot to her. The Duke then claims that this might help, and the main character claims that they will intercept the information channels in advance. After all, journalists understand the importance of news like no one else. Just like Elliot. And even find out something, but if they control the flow of information, they will be able to intercept the distribution. The girl also understands that newspapers are the first place where rumors start, because they are generously paid for any news that can cause a stir. The blonde man at this time claims that there are many people who will grab onto any news item, and this is not a bad idea, and the young lady claims that he will have to deal with real spies. To control information in secular society, Eric then replies that it's clear, and the girl says that the most important thing is to convince everyone that this marriage is not connected with Elliot, and those who know that his mother is Eliza, as well as those who think that he is the son of the Duke. The girl realizes that she doesn't think that with everything around and the newspaper rumors, they will be able to keep all the truthful information. But if the same thing is repeated over and over again, even if it is a lie, it will become ingrained in people's minds, and these rumors will become true. The eyes that are now directed at her could turn to Elliot at any moment. That's why now, the girl suggests making everything so that it seems like this is the wedding of the century. The Duke is then silent for a moment, and the young lady asks what it is that the man asserts. What matters most to him is their wedding, and he would protect Elliot no matter what. But if he weren't her son, he wouldn't have accepted him as his own. The protagonist then thanks the Duke and asserts that this is important to her, after which the Duke claims that he would have accepted any of her children, and therefore said that he would do anything for her. The guy also wonders if he still hasn't become special to her, but the young lady replies that this is not the case, and the man claims that he thought that they both agreed to this marriage. Clare claims she always thought he was a handsome young man and asks if she only likes his face. The main character says, "More." However, the guy immediately interrupts her and kisses her. The girl then realizes that he didn't even let her finish speaking, after which he says that it's the last one. But the guy claims that he doesn't know what she wants, but let her do as she pleases. The girl then asks if it's true and asks what if she suddenly takes the diamond mine. Eric tells her to take it because it's already a family typo anyway. Well, the young lady then says that no, and she was just joking because that's not what we're talking about. The Duke then asks if she is unhappy about something, and the Dune people note that she does not like being pressured. She also doesn't need all of the Duke's property, and the girl asks if he does everything she asks for. The guy then sits down next to her and replies that this is true. The delicate lady claims that she never wanted to get married, but she would not refuse an engagement cat. And she wants a ring with a clear, light-colored diamond of 2 carats. The blonde then says how simple it is. And the girl replies that this is only by the Klausner's standards, and if it is big, it will become heavier, and then she will not be able to wear it all the time. The young lady also takes the Duke's hand, and he says that his ring is very simple. But then she sees a mark on her finger and realizes that the guy took the title 7 years ago and apparently never took it off again. The girl also understands that she could not express condolences when the previous Duke fell into eternal sleep, even if she were in the capital and not in Delford. An ordinary baroness would still never be able to enter the Klausner duchy. The blonde man asks the girl what's going on. The lady replies that nothing and understands that then she wrote him a letter, and if he had answered, then she would have come at least to console him, but it doesn't seem like he received it. The answer was written by the butler. And this clearly reflects the difference in their statuses, because if the guy hadn't destroyed this wall first, nothing would have happened. The girl then tells him to wear what he has on now and not to make anything new. Let hers look like his own. The young woman also claims that they'll write about the wedding ring in the newspapers and add that she wants to go into the diamond mining business. The young man then agrees, insisting that he shouldn't miss out on any opportunity. The young lady then claims that the whole world will find out about this wedding and she will earn more money. The Duke merely smiled after this and said that that's exactly what they would do. Thus began today's meeting. And in the lobby of the Innenhof Hotel, 50 editors-in-chief gathered, and she bought all the newspapers. 3 days ago, someone told a man to hand over his entire share. The man was shocked. The Duke's representative claimed that His Majesty wished to obtain the rights to their newspaper publishing house and printing press while preserving the jobs of current employees. However, the editor understood that even being the Duke himself, how could he so suddenly ask to hand over his publishing house? And this was incomprehensible to the mind, since such matters cannot be resolved with money alone. The man also understood that this profession was a way to assert his social status, and he did not think that with that kind of money he would be able to start a new life. Well, then the Duke's representative claims that they are offering them a sum of 3 million gold, and he will receive this money immediately. He will also remain the editor-in-chief, and this position, as well as his salary, will remain his for the rest of his life, and no problems will arise. After all, the Klausners wouldn't be able to manage such a small business. The editor, shocked, wondered if this was all a dream. A little while later, they are already at the hotel, and the main character claims that despite the surprise, all the invited guests have shown up, after which she invites them to sit down. The girl claims that she didn't call them to scold her, and that they were making a mountain out of a molehill. They also deliberately chose flashy headlines and published an offensive image, and now it's not she but her lawyer who will have to deal with these issues. She wants the articles to continue to appear, but less frequently. The editors are then a little surprised, and the young lady claims that with their pen they have defiled her honor, and with it they can clear it. A little while later, people are already leaving the room, and the young lady sighs. after which she sees another guy and asks him what his question is. The young man then asks for forgiveness for not obeying the Baroness's order to leave. He then claims that his name is Casey Morris and that his family is in the book business and that he publishes a small magazine. And the main character then says that's how it is, and the young man claims that he thought that he could help them in the new business even though he is not as good at weaving as Roger Carson. The young lady then asks what business the guy is talking about, and it seems to her that a weaving enterprise cannot have anything to do with the bookstore, but the guy claims that he is talking about the young lady's wedding. The main character then says that it is no secret that most marriages among the aristocracy are of convenience, but this does not concern him in any way, after which the young man asks not to misunderstand him. And he wanted to talk about her wedding dress, veil, and shoes, as well as the dress for the reception and the suit for the Duke. He's interested in everything, right down to the bedding, rugs, and curtains. Clare insists there must be some benefit to him. However, pattern fabrics are already taking over the textile market, not only for dresses, but also for bedding and everything else. So the girl asks him if he thinks she's really using her own wedding ceremony as a billboard. The guy replies that, as far as he knows, she doesn't usually wear gemstones. Well, today it's not just her outfit, but her earrings too. Well, then the young man understands something. And he argues that with the development of industry and the rise in living standards, the demand for luxury goods will inevitably increase. In the weaving industry, the production of patterned fabrics increased, but the price for them fell, and the market expanded in accordance with demand. And the young man asks if the same thing will happen with diamonds, since this ceremony will provide an opportunity to attract consumers who are interested in precious stones but cannot afford them. The protagonist realizes that the Klausners own the two largest diamond mines in the empire. They also control the extraction, processing, and supply of precious stones. This way, they can meet demand. They will also create a colossal market for a similar weaving industry. The young lady asserts that the direction is completely different, but the gist is sound, and everything is true. They're trying to attract new customers with products they've never offered before. After which, the girl also says she's pleased to meet Casey, and she is always glad to see capable people. The young man then takes the lady's hand in his own. However, at that very moment, the Duchess flies into the room and sees this picture, where a young man kisses a young lady's hand, after which the woman screams that this sum is a dissolute girl. The Duchess also wonders how she dares to get involved with all sorts of men. After which she completely rips the shirt off the young man, after which the main character tells Casey to move away. She also turns to the lady and says how ignorant this is. But the woman only screams at the girl to watch her language. The young lady then claims that she does not warn about the visit and rushes out without knocking, and also begins to scream for no reason, and all this does not look like the behavior of a well-bred lady. And besides, tearing clothes off a stranger is too much, and the girl asks, "Aren't these base and contemptible actions?" The Duchess only becomes angry after this and thinks that even if it were so, how dare the girl leave Eric and do who knows what with another man? After which she asks what kind of impudence this is, and what the girl was caught on a secret date after the engagement. But the main character then asks who she's talking about on a date. After that, they're silent for a bit. But then the woman asks if the girl is trying to deny the fact that she was just alone with this man, after which the young lady tells her not to make things up, because they were just discussing business. The brunette then simply laughs and insists that the girl is making a good excuse. But in any case, that's not what she came to argue about. Then she asks who the young lady is, to lay her hands on diamond mines. Until now, she had been a poor merchant, but now that she had entered the Duke's family, she must be careful and learn how to manage a household. The woman also wondered if she intended to work with the men digging the earth. The main character then says that yes, she understands that she does not want to argue with this woman about this, and why should she even justify herself, since all the newspapers are under her control, so spreading rumors is impossible. And if this woman had not been Eric's stepmother, she would have thrown her out long ago. After which the young lady asserts that I am still far from aristocracy, and the woman asks whether she admits her insignificance. But the young lady says that if she doesn't want to create an illegitimate heir, she should be more careful with her words. The woman then cries out, asking what she's talking about when the young lady insists it's a fact. And what's more, Eric entrusted her with the work at the mines, so let the woman make all the claims to him. Well, she doesn't know if he'll want to listen to her because Eric really trusts her business sense, and the mother knows this, but the woman then asks who the girl called mother. But the young lady wonders if she's mistaken, and that she thought mother and son were inextricably linked even if they had different last names. The woman then, shocked, asks what the girl is talking about, and the young lady replies that she is of course talking about her subordinate, whose last name is Krozik. The Duchess is surprised by this, and Clare claims that such a noble lady as she would never be left alone with a man who is not her husband, and she fully approves of her second marriage, and will also persuade her husband if he is against it. The woman is then in shock and doesn't even know what to say, and the young lady then asks if her mother is okay, after which she claims that she feels unwell and asks the maids to escort her to the restroom. The brunette then turns to the young lady and asks how she dared, and then she is simply led out of the room. The butler then bows to them, and the main character tells him not to let anyone in without prior arrangement. And for the last time he puts her in such an awkward position, after which the man asks the Baroness for forgiveness. The heroine then sighs, while the Duke looks at the rings. The jeweler then claims that these are the best ones left, and the lady sold everything else. These are also of good quality, but they are colorless and look cheap. The Duke then claims that he himself said they were good, after which he opens one of the boxes and realizes that a diamond is a rare gemstone, and it is also easy to mine, and the percentage of losses during processing is quite low. After the second mine was opened in the duchy, the value of diamonds has been steadily declining, and the best stones are still considered to be bright pink or stronger diamonds. But what is more important is what the girl wants to get, and colorless diamonds are much cheaper than rubies and emeralds, and usually the young lady does not wear jewelry. The man then claims that's why she'll love it, that it's the perfect option without setting, and that it's the most pleasing color. The Duke then says they'll set it in a ring for her. He also insists that a design needs to be developed and that the guy should send someone to the Baroness. The man then says that it will be done, but the Duke insists that one gift will not be enough and that he has prepared something else. To which he replies, of course they use the finest quality diamonds to make the necklace, and colorless diamonds were used as the base. The jeweler also asks if the gentleman plans to wear only new jewelry at the ceremony, and the Duke replies that this is his bride's decision and almost all the family jewels are in the hands of his mother. Then the jeweler asserts that with all due respect, mother will not give them up, to which the Duke replies that yes. He also understands that he needs to get the master's key from her, but there is no need to rush. Clare isn't interested in family traditions, and he has no particular desire to get attached to these incomprehensible customs, and the girl says that she will go into the diamond business, so let him get started. And, as Clare says, it'll be the wedding of the century, and a love match at that, judging by the fact that they've bought up all the newspapers. She is serious and may change her opinion about precious stones, but this is undesirable. The guy understands that the duchy does not need advertising, and it is unpleasant that Clare knows more and more people. The man also understands that he was unhappy with the fact that Clare wanted to live in the shadows doing nothing, but now he doesn't like the fact that she is recognized. At this time, the jeweler turns to His Highness, and he says that yes, they also use family jewels, and those that are specially made, there's nothing wrong with that, and let them do what they can, to which the man replies that he understands. Then someone knocks on the door, and the Duke asks what the servant came for, and he replies that his mother must be tired after the trip, and he keeps repeating the old Duke's name and crying. According to Maria, Baron Delford is there. He also wants to meet the gentleman. The Duchess is sitting with a guy at this time. He also asks how the girl dared to say such a thing to her. The young man then tells the lady to stop crying, because it hurts him to watch her suffer. But she only says that Iguan does not understand and how one can disgrace a person like that, but the young man is interested in what they told her. The woman also understands that Louise learned from the maid the news related to the Klausner diamond mines. It turns out that the owner of the weaving business is reaching out his little hands to the diamonds, and she needed more information, Clare Delford's attempt to do business with the Duke's family could prove decisive for the future of the Klausner Duchy, and an order was given for all free people to search for information. So she wasn't the only one involved in this investigation. But she can't lag behind others in this information war, and when talking about the diamond business, it's impossible not to mention Noah Diamonds, who is closely connected to their family. She also needs to be at least half a step ahead of the others and learn about the Duke's plans. The woman also asks Franz how she should live after facing such humiliation. The man, however, understands that this is someone he doesn't want to meet, and it would be quicker to find out everything from the maid. The Duchess insists that she did ask Franz to take her with him, but Egon then turns to Madame and asks why she's talking like that. Any duke like her would be upset to hear such a thing. He also suggests that the lady stop shedding tears because it seems as if precious stones are rolling out of her eyes, which makes him very sad. After which, the guy wipes the Duchess's eyes from tears, but at the same moment someone announces that the Duke has arrived. Then the blonde man heads down the corridor, and near the servants who meet him, there stands also the young man who was with the Duchess. The Duke passes by him, and the guy wonders if he is ignoring him, or if he really doesn't know. Count Korzik, well, that means he might not know, or in any case, all of this is connected with the Empress. The young man then just turns around and is about to leave, but then one of the maids, she hands him a note. The young man then heads for the carriage, but then another note is handed to him. The guy is then a little surprised, and when he sits in the carriage, he looks at what is written there about the fact that in 3 days at 8 p.m. he must be at the central Noah Diamond store, and the guy understands that this is a note from the Baroness. It is divided into 2 parts, each of which can be interpreted in its own way. And firstly, Korzik had already found out everything. And secondly, Louise's weapon had been bribed. Thirdly, they decided to bribe him too. The Duke, meanwhile, turns to his mother, and she says she heard such disappointing words from Clare. The woman replies that she did nothing wrong and asks if the guy knows what she'll open. And also, does he know that she is dating other men behind his back? It's true, after all, she saw it all with her own eyes. But the Duke insists that Clare is a businesswoman and her job is to meet people. Well, the woman then cries out to her son and asks if he really will give the business to this woman. He also wonders if he's in his right mind to entrust such a task to a woman. The young man replies that Clare owns a weaving business, but asks the Duchess if it's anything like weaving. The young man then claims that diamonds are mined in vast quantities, and the profits from them are gradually declining. And taking care of this is a noble thing, but the woman asks if the guy really believes that she can handle it. And does she know anything about jewelry, especially since she's a woman no one knows in society? Eric replies that when Clare is in business, she doesn't meet customers like the Duchess sometimes does. The woman also says that even if giving her the mines isn't such a bad idea, he should hire a manager himself, in case she colludes with the man and steals their property. However, the man simply tells his mother to stop speculating, and he asks if all she saw was that the girl was dating someone. The brunette is then shocked and wonders if the guy just interrupted her, but the young man only claims that he has decided everything. And I also chose this woman, so let mother not interfere in this anymore. But the brunette only exclaims, how can a guy say such a thing? She's his mother. The young man insists he respects his mother and will continue to do so, but he asks her to maintain her dignity too. The woman then insists that she's not saying the guy did anything wrong and is simply worried. After which she lies down on the bed, however. The Duke then tells her to give him the cornflower blue key to the safe. The woman then asks in shock why all of a sudden, and the young man replies that she can stay in this room. And if she feels uncomfortable living in the same house with them, then they will build a separate one, and the budget will also be drawn up separately. However, the mother must accept all the changes. After this, the woman simply collapses on the bed and again calls for her now husband. She also asks how he could leave her. The Duke tells the woman not to cry too much, as it's bad for her health. The guy also understands that maybe all this is because of a late agreement, and he decided to get married too late, so his mother does not give him the key, and maybe he needed to take it when his father fell into eternal sleep. But the situation was unsuitable then, and there were no plans to marry. it seems strange to leave the owner's place vacant after taking the key. But looking back, I still feel like giving the key to anyone other than Clare would have been a huge mistake. Heir girl refused the glove, but she'll definitely accept this ring. A little while later, someone comes into the young lady's office and claims that it is from the Duke. The young lady then thanks him and asks if there was a card included, but the woman claims that he did not write anything separately. Clare also wonders what kind of bouquet and box this is, but the nanny only tells the lady to open it. The main character does so, but realizes it's too early for the ring. However, when she opens the box, she realizes it contains a cornflower blue key. The nanny is a little surprised and insists that it's the key of the Duke of Klausner's wife. The young lady understands that, of course, it was supposed to go to her after the wedding. But it seems Louise wasn't so easy parting with it. Therefore, the main character mentally thanks the Duke for bringing it in advance, preventing clashes with her mother-in-law, and she didn't know he was so thoughtful. The nanny then asks when they're having tea, and the main character asks why. The woman insists that the lady received such a valuable item and it should be celebrated. Clare claims that even if they arrange it, it is unlikely that anyone will come, and the woman then says that the lady does have friends. Well, yes, she replies that there are not many of them in the capital. She also understands that, of course, she had friends at the academy, but they weren't close enough to meet in person. And even if they had, they wouldn't have opened up so much for the sake of meeting. Of course, there's Elliot. But if he becomes the first to know about the key, then rumors will spread instantly, and if she herself, without knowing it, kindles hatred in the mistress, then everything will only get worse. A short time later, a maid enters the Baroness's room and announces that Mr. James and another guest have arrived. The young lady then realizes that since arriving in the capital, meetings with acquaintances have proceeded smoothly. And right before the wedding, right after the future mother-in-law, a talkative uncle comes and the young lady asks who the second guest is. To which the maid claims that this is Count Schneider's daughter, and the main character thinks, could it be that the Count's daughter has arrived? She also doesn't understand why she came, although she thinks the reason is obvious. And she's probably curious about Elliot, but now there's her wedding and the arrival of the boy. The most popular topics of conversation in social circles. The blonde is a curious person, who also loves to be the center of attention, so to get new gossip, she turned to James. Count Schneider's youngest daughter is popular and a rare beauty, and, moreover, she was a late child and was raised with love and care. She is an aristocrat and a prima donna at the opera house. It was previously said that she had tarnished the family's reputation. Well now, with her profession and her heavenly voice, she's not subject to criticism, and Count Schneider didn't mind. After all, she doesn't sing for the money. Her specialty is choral soprano, and she does everything she can to occasionally receive an invitation to perform on stage. In her own way, she is a symbol of a new era. But in any case, the main character thinks that this is her chance to get a top-level model. Elliot turns to his grandfather at this point and says that he does too, after which the man tells the boy to sit down quickly. And he just claims that he also loves cookies, but the man is only interested in how many times he told him to behave decently. The man then takes one of the cookies and hands it to the boy, who then thanks him. And the main character understands that in any case, his status is unclear and no one knows the boy's last name, and he's not her child. The girl also wonders how she can see the head of the family in a higher position if she's unmarried and raising a child. But that's all in the past now, and the boy has the same pretty face as Alice. At this time, someone else says that the boy is so cute, and it turns out to be a lady with blonde hair. She then claims that she will treat the boy to cookies, and the uncle turns to him. And he says that since he took it, he needs to say thank you, to which the young man agrees. Well, uncle also says he looks embarrassed. The blonde lady thinks how adorable he is, and if you think about it, this boy is the spitting image of Mr. Eric. But he doesn't look like his mother at all, and the girl thinks that this is great, and it's also good that she was convinced of this. Mom wanted to send him to some boarding school in the village, but she wouldn't wish that on an innocent child. And besides, the Duke needs an heir, and she doesn't want children, so the girl understands that she needs to be a good stepmother to this boy. At this moment, the main character enters the room, and the young man, seeing her, immediately runs up to her. The lady with the blonde hair then has a smile on her face. tells the Baroness that she is glad to meet her, and that she is Iris from County Schneider. The main character then smiles at her capital with a fatherly smile, and claims that she did not think that, being in such a position, she would be honored with a personal visit from a lady. The girl then claims that she came without an invitation from their family, but the lady welcomes her so warmly. And she's probably too curious, but asks not to be scolded for it. Clare asks what she's talking about, and the girl is very curious after all. The blonde then says that's the man who stole her blue dress. The main character then thinks about that dress, and he wonders if she's really talking about that very thing. And the girl shouldn't have known about it. It seems like she wants to see how she'll react. Clare also realizes she did this 5 years ago, and it is impossible for anyone to know who was in the Duke's room then. But if that is the case, then all of Duke Klausner's servants and guards must be fired. It is unlikely that the Duke himself would have told anyone, and if these two were in such a relationship, she would not have come there now. And the main character understands that over the past 5 years no one could have found out about this, so she's bluffing, and the main character wonders what the lady is talking about. Iris then says it was probably her dress. However, the main character claims that this is strange, and he asks the girl if Eric did something to her dress. But the blonde only smiles. And he also tells the girl not to pretend that she doesn't know, and she knows for sure that she took her dress 5 years ago. But the lady with red hair then wonders if the girl is really saying that when she left Eric's bedroom, she took someone else's clothes from there. Iris replies that, of course, but the main character comes closer to her and claims that if these were Lady Iris's clothes. So it turns out she was in that bedroom so often that she left her things there. The girl is a little surprised by this, and the main character wonders if this is true because this was the only time she had to take clothes from Eric, but apparently they were prepared there. Or maybe she took off the dress herself, and the main character insists that can't be true. The blonde then doesn't even know what to do. And she starts crying, and Clare is a little surprised. Iris then asks how a girl can say such a thing. She simply wondered what had happened to the dress. The protagonist realizes that if they had been there together, she would have exposed her. And she wonders if the makeup is waterproof, since it didn't even run. The blonde lady claims a dear friend designed this look especially for her, after which the main character thinks this girl is definitely a prima donna, given her acting and expressiveness are top-notch. The man then turns to Clare and asks if she's doing this out of petty envy. The protagonist is a little surprised, and the man claims that she could have misunderstood the words of the Count's daughter, but how could a well-bred lady so defame the honor of another person? Not an uncle, and also claims that he did say that she should be careful with her words, because a girl should not only be smart, but also know when to show herself, and not mess around with commoners and think about how to get around others. But the main character then interrupts her uncle and asks who is now trying to tarnish the family's reputation in front of others. The man becomes a little nervous after this, and then turns to Mrs. Schneider. And it's Clare who's asking for forgiveness, however, the main character interrupts her uncle. After which she turns to Charles and tells him to call a carriage for Mrs. Schneider. Yusha then asks if she's really telling him this, and the main character wonders if there's anyone there besides him. The guy then tells the lady to stop crying like that and hands her his handkerchief, but the girl just runs out of the room. Clare then thinks she's betting her dinner that she wouldn't burst into tears alone. The guy then runs after the young lady and says that he will take her there, and also that Mrs. Clare did not want to bring the guests to tears and send them away. At this time, Elliot asks his aunt if everything is okay, and she replies that everything is fine. The boy also asks if they had a fight, but the main character replies that no one had a fight. But the young man only claims that no, and they had a fight, because the aunt got angry and even blushed. The main character thinks that she shouldn't behave so frighteningly in front of the child, after which she apologizes to him, but he thinks that it's so hard. Clare also tells her uncle that she didn't ask him to be silent or to be quiet as a mouse, but if he wants to receive respect as the eldest in the family, then let him behave accordingly. The man then claims that she's the one being rude today and brought the guest to tears, and he boldly points it out to his uncle. But the main character asks if he's really saying she was bold. after which he claims that even the Duke does not allow himself to say such things to her, and although she is his niece, he is not the one who can be rude to her. And the expensive suit he wears, the cane, the silk tie, the hat, the jewelry, and the money they live on and spend on the upkeep of the estate. The young lady asks if he's ever wondered where it all comes from. After all, this can't be an inheritance left by his deceased grandparents, so let him show at least a drop of respect to the younger ones who care for him. And let him remember to be careful what he sees, hears, and says, because he knows just as well as she does why they should become related to the Duke. Then the young lady leaves, and the boy tells his aunt that she's definitely angry. The girl then asks if he's scared, and the boy replies that he's sad. The young lady also claims she had to become as prickly as a hedgehog so it wouldn't hurt. Elliot then says, "I don't want you to get hurt," after which the main character says that everything is fine, and also understands that judging by Iris's behavior, this will not spread further, but the girl also thinks that she does not care at all about what she is going to do. After all, this wedding would only take place for Elliot's safety, and everything else wasn't that important. Even as she was leaving the Duke's bedroom, she thought there had been a girl there, and they must have met, since her clothes were there. Well, the main character then thinks about how he proposed, and she also wonders if she stole someone else's boyfriend. Well, the young lady still thinks that this cannot be, and when she thinks about it, she starts shaking all over. At this time, someone else knocks on the room, and the girl asks a little angrily who it is, to which the guy replies that it is Gray. The main character is then a little surprised, remarking on how quickly time has flown by. She also realizes that it's time to meet her mother-in-law's friend. Meanwhile, the young man heads down the street to the designated store. He understands that the price of precious stones depends on their rarity. If the Noah mines cease production, the price will rise significantly. Anticipating this, my grandfather launched Noah Diamonds 30 years ago. Furthermore, due to the impossibility of maintaining the family's wealth, the Duke's family only owned land, so they decided to take the risk. But time passed, and huge diamond mines were developed in the duchy, one after another, and these diamonds were of the same quality. It was impossible to resist the Duke, so they were offered control over production volumes, but the required quantity was too high. Common gemstones no longer had value, and since diamonds were no longer considered valuable stones, most of them were destined to gather dust in safes. However, the Acadian business owner decided to take advantage of this without hesitation, and now the young man understands that he needs to make a name for himself. At this time, someone opens the door for the guy and says that he has arrived, after which they go inside, and Roger asks if it is dark there. Another young man replies that yes, and a little while later he already sees the main character in one of the rooms. Claire says she's glad to meet him and asks if they've met anywhere before. The guy replies that, as far as he remembers, they attended mathematics classes together at the academy, and he is happy to see the Baroness again. The young lady then comments on how good his memory is, and that it wasn't all that remarkable. After which, the young man claims that it turns out her memory isn't entirely accurate. And it's hard not to notice the younger class who is constantly arguing with the Duke. He also talks about the younger students and doesn't want to lose. And even if the girl is not a duchess but a baroness, this is enough to attract attention. After this, a slightly nasty atmosphere hangs in the room, and Ogre offers to talk about diamonds, after which he hands over a contract. The young man then looks at it and sees that it says that all diamonds of 2 carats and below must be sold cheap to a weaving mill, and even his father has already signed it. But if they throw money around like that, all they can do is watch the price rise. At this point, the main character asks him if he knows they're starting a diamond business and plan to dramatically increase demand for the jewelry. And it's safe to say that buying the newspapers was the first step. As demand increases, not only the Klausners but also jewelers will see benefits, especially those with large inventories of high-quality diamonds like croziers. Before becoming an aristocrat, she was a small trader, and one could say that she was a retailer, and she also cannot afford to separate the huge profits from the one who practically monopolized Noah Diamonds. And also, if they enter into this contract, they will become equal partners. And if the contract is terminated, then she will return the desired quantity of products at the purchase price. The guy then reads that it says investments in the appraisal company Maurice, and the joint development of diamond appraisal criteria, and the appraisal of all diamonds in the Maurice company. The girl claims that they do this so that wealthy commoners can afford to buy precious stones, and so that the residents of the capital have at least one. But first, they will set standards and price estimates, so that even the most undiscerning buyer can judge a reasonable price. And to guarantee a return of a certain amount, should anything happen, she could guarantee a repeat purchase. Her diamond isn't the kind of stone that can be easily damaged. The young man then looks at these contracts with a little surprise and asks if she is talking about commoners. He understands that if you think about it, this is not just entertainment and that patterned fabrics, toys, this whole business is designed for the middle-class market. At this time, the main character asks if everything is clear, to which the guy replies that yes, everything is clear to him too. And if the weaving business was such a success, Clare will certainly succeed in other areas. Especially with the Duke's power at her disposal, she has no chance of failure. The girl also claims that she always tries to treat her partners and managers well, and, of course, expects the same from him. The guy then claims that if they sign this contract, she will no longer be able to represent Her Majesty. And he asks if this is not enough. But the girl then replies that in fact she can buy everything herself, and they involve the Krozik family, which, overall, isn't beneficial simply because of their position. The young man then asks what the lady wants from him, and the main character just smiles and tells him to tell everything he knows about Countess Schneider. The young man then wonders if this girl knows that Iris is one of the few who is being watched by the Empress herself. But he wonders how long she has known this, and if she knows this information, do the fabric merchants know about it? If the Duke also knows, then we cannot relax, and it turns out that she is aware of the Empress's interests. And her interest is focused on the succession to the throne. The Count's third son poked his nose into this matter and was plunged into eternal slumber. But he was only a secretary at court, and Her Majesty was keeping an eye on the Countess, even though he thought it was just paranoia. But over the last 2 to 3 years, plans for her have changed dramatically. But the young man still understands that this is not something to think about now, and if he is caught thinking about it, he may lose trust. But if he tells only the obvious, he will be considered useless. After which, the guy claims that the Count's wife has access to the Crown Prince's palace, and the main character wonders if he's talking about the Lotus Palace. But this is the Empress's estate. The girl also understands that, angry at Iris, she unknowingly asked the question, expecting to receive some information about her, but she had no idea such a thing would come up. Judging by the hint on the dress, there's definitely something there. The girl could not even imagine that the Countess and the Empress were somehow connected, and by asking questions to the spy, it was obvious that some information about her would be revealed. The Count's wife, Katya, was the Count's former lover and now his second wife. She was an opera singer of former aristocratic descent, but this is not certain. Despite her dubious origins, the Count's family structure is strong. The older brothers, caring for their younger sister, facilitated her official marriage, and the girl wonders why the Empress holds secret meetings, since they are not such close people and probably few people know about it. After which, the main character claims that 20 years have already passed since the Countess's second marriage, and her assistant replies that 17 years ago, because Mrs. Iris was 6 years old at the time. The protagonist then realizes that it's 17 years ago, considering Iris's age. At that time, the Empress was only a princess, and the Count was very far from politics and their paths could not cross, and it turns out that the third son was immersed in eternal sleep. Now the main character asks if he is following the Count's wife, and the guy replies that no, and he received this information while visiting Mrs. Iris. The young lady then says that that's it, and thinks for a bit, after which she tells the guy to maintain his current relationship with Her Majesty. The girl also claims that they ask to hand her over and let the guy behave as usual, because they're signing the second contract, not with Mr. Johann, but with Count Krozik. And all she wants is for copies of the reports on the Klausner estate to be passed on to her. The guy then says he understands the young lady, and the main character insists that Casey will visit him with the contract within 2 days, to which he agrees. The young lady then turns to Rosie and asks her to accompany the gentleman. after which the guy leaves, and Casey claims that he is not someone who can be trusted. After which the young lady claims that then she will have to bribe him, and thinks that from the very beginning she did not expect any loyalty, because a bribed spy can be lured with money. Well, he won't be able to give the empress the winnowing. The count is economically dependent on the diamond business, and he seems shrewd. The young man also asks whether it's absolutely necessary to use this man. He asserts that, of course, he has no right to interfere in his mistress's affairs, and simply wouldn't be better off excluding the spy from the plan. The main character claims that this is the easiest way to scout out the situation, and that it is impossible to prevent surveillance of such a large family as the duchy. And also, if we get rid of Johann, then someone else will be found, and it is better to control the information through the hands of an already known spy, because this is economically beneficial, since most of the estate's spies are controlled by Johann. The guy also asks if the lady will tell the Duke about this, but Noda replies that this is only her business, and he is too noble for that. The girl also understands that until now, everything was fine and Louise was not able to get closer to the secrets of the family and production, but even if she had gained access, she was not interested. At first, the girl suspected that Johann was luring information out through seduction, but this was not the case. And the Empress isn't interested in money and business, the duchy or politics. In this matter, the most important things are inheritance rights and connections, and up until now, Eric hadn't cared about either. But now everything is different. And in order to protect the boy, it is necessary to keep the secret, because he is a small sprout that the Empress wants to crush. The girl also thinks that if only nothing happened, they would think of her as a happy Cinderella, or better yet, that they would consider this marriage a source of money. After all, in any case, she doesn't think that there is a spy network in the Lotus Palace, and the idea of swaying the Count's wife to her side in order to spy on Iris is simply incomprehensible, because what use would she be? The main character also thinks that perhaps she lured the mother to use her daughter, but the question is why she did it. After which they are silent for a while, and the young man looks at the young lady, after which she asks what is wrong, but he replies that nothing, and he is just frozen, and also thinks that the lady jumped to conclusions about Lady Iris based only on rumors. The protagonist then asks what these rumors are about. The young man replies that they were talking about a relationship between the Duke and Lady Iris, and also that they dated before their marriage. The young man also claims that this is, of course, a false rumor, and that these two, who were considered eligible candidates for marriage in social circles, did not marry upon reaching marriageable age. The main character just smirks and thinks, that's how it is. Meanwhile, the Duke heads to the young lady's office and realizes that since the light is on, it seems she's still working. Clare is a contradictory girl, and she said that she would live diligently, but this is not true, because living diligently only means enjoying your privileges like other aristocrats, and she is not that kind of person at all. And this swinish aristocrat speaks while being an aristocrat. But even if he changes these expressions and mindsets, despite all his efforts to maintain his position and status, he has never met a more aristocratic person than Clare. If she decides to do something, she will never back down, regardless of whether it is her personal decision or obedience to an order, and although the girl abandoned her studies, it was only to hide her abilities from others. And nothing special happened that day. The Duke insisted the girl could clearly do better and wondered if she wasn't trying at all. And the talented girl was not even listed in the student rankings, so she must have been intentionally getting low grades. The young lady then claimed that it was very wonderful to hear him speak of her skills, and the Duke asked what that meant. To which the girl replied that this meant that it was certainly pleasant to hear such things. But even if she, as the daughter of a baron, received high marks, she would not be able to use them anywhere. The boy realizes he doesn't remember what he answered then. Now the Duke enters the young lady's office, and Gray asks if he really came at such an hour. The Duke merely inquires whether he has anything to do with this matter, to which he replies that of course, since a contract was required. After which the blonde man moves on, and the main character asks why he came so late. The guy claims she still hasn't returned home, and he thought he should walk her home. He also asks if his servant has come, to which the girl replies that he has. But frankly speaking, arranging a meeting via a note sent 20 or 30 minutes in advance is not the best idea. Many found that it is impossible to send it faster. And the young lady claims that the meeting is scheduled at least a week in advance, after which the Duke asks if she really didn't want to see him. Clare replies that now is not the right time and understands that if you had already invented the telephone, she would have asked him not to come. Meanwhile, the guy asks how dinner went, and after all, the process of becoming an heir to the throne is currently underway. If anyone had wanted to argue with him about this, they would certainly have brought in his mother, not distant relatives or servants. The protagonist then asks, "What about Chairman Neumann?" The Duke replies that he's a progressive man, and Clare asks if he agrees. The blonde replies that the fact that the Baron has the blood of the ruling family is already progressive, and asks if that's not true. The young lady says she will never understand it, and Eric claims that arrogance is her style, not his, and the main character asks what he means. After which the guy claims that she says that she does not understand this progressiveness, but there is a difference between Arin, the Baroness, and him who is the owner of the duchy, so it turns out that deep down she can't accept it. The young lady then insists that this is something new, after which they head back to the estate, and the boy asks if she did a good job. However, the girl claims that now she is more concerned with the affairs of the Klausners, and not Krozik and his ilk. The Duke then says that this is how it is, after which he looks at the lady and turns to her, but when the girl asks what he wants, the guy only remains silent, after which he says that nothing. After that, they go outside, and the young man asks why she is angry, and the main character asks if he is talking about her. The guy then claims that she is raising her voice, but the young lady says that she is not at all, and what could have made her angry, because she is just tired. That is why it seems that way to him. And also today she was just planning to finish discussing the terms of the contract, but she had to get pretty nervous, which is why she looks tired. After this, the Duke remains silent, and the main character thinks it's a bit strange, and that their conversation is over. It also seems he's not even thinking of responding. Well, he can't pretend he's not involved, and that's been enough for the last 5 years. The young man then turns to Clare again, and the main character cannot stand it, after which she replies that yes, and this is really not for her. The girl also asks what his relationship is with Irish Schneider. She also understands that they should first talk about the Lotus Palace, but the incident with the dress won't leave her mind. She doesn't want to dredge up the past, but she needs to sort things out. The Duke then replies that they've been friends with the Schneider family for 3 generations, and that her father has cared for Iris since childhood. The protagonist asks if that's all there is to it, after which the young man asks if there should be anything else. The young lady asks if rumors spread quickly, given that they're in a marriage of convenience and he's dating someone else. The guy then asks why he'd lie to Clare, but she asks what about the dress? The guy then asks what dress she is talking about. The girl claims that it was the dress she was wearing when she left his room and that it belonged to Irish Schneider. The blonde then asks what she's talking about, and the main character wonders if he was really dating 2 women at once, because it's simply unbelievable, and if only she knew. Well, the Duke then simply approaches the young lady and kisses her. The main character is still angry and tries to push him away. Then she claims she's actually angry, and the guy suggests she get even more angry, after which the main character asks if he's really saying this to hang her. But the Duke simply insists that she's so hot when she's angry. Afterwards, he sits down next to her, and the main character asks him what the hell he's doing. He replies that he asked Pavel to bring her a dress that morning, since he tore her clothes. The main character then asks when, and the guy replies, when he woke up. But Clare replies that's not what she meant, and the guy insists that if she wants to know where it's from, she should just ask, and it's strange that he and Iris ended up in the same atelier. The guy also insists that he told her to buy the dress somewhere good, and the main character then asks when he woke up, and also whether he didn't wake her up as soon as he opened his eyes, because then he should have woken up at least an hour earlier. Well, then the young lady suddenly falls silent, and the guy asks why, and if she thinks she looks funny in her sleep, to which the girl replies that no. The Duke tells her not to worry that her jealousy might seem inappropriate, because she's not the only one. The protagonist asks what he's talking about, and when she's ever been jealous. The guy claims that he is not the kind of person who would build a relationship with a girl who is not married to him. After which the young lady becomes embarrassed and wonders if he's really saying that to her face. The guy then just moves closer and kisses her again. A little while later, the girl is already lying in bed and realizes that she has taken over the place. But it looks like she overdid it with alcohol. The young woman also says she's feeling a bit hot, after which she realizes she fell asleep covered in sweat, feeling terrible, and the bed is uncomfortable. She also thinks she'd like someone to walk on her back. And at moments like these, she longs to return to the modern world of the proletariat, wishing for some kind of boiler, air conditioning, heated floors, or at least a heating pad, bandages, paracetamol, and a spring mattress. Then the girl gets out of bed and tells him to let her go already, but the guy suggests she just sleep, because it's still a long time until dawn. After which he lays her down on the bed, and the main character hits him, but realizes that he has no reaction even to the hit, and he pretends that he doesn't care. The girl also understands what it means. Her arms hurt and asks if it's because of the bed or if he's just exercising. The guy then asks what she's talking about, and the young lady simply asks if his back hurts. After which the young man claims he can't even be a gentleman in bed. Claire cries out, "Who's talking about this?" and asks when he ever acted like a gentleman and how he can avoid back pain after sleeping on such a bed. The girl also asks if there are ropes at the bottom of this bed, and the guy replies that it is possible, and the young lady claims that a new one should be bought. She also wonders why he is looking at her like that, and didn't he say that he would break the bed, but the guy asks what? After which the young lady claims that one needs to know how to use advanced technologies and that a bed is not just furniture but a whole science. She also asks if they can change the bed since she sleeps there now anyway, but Pony replies that no, and he thought that she would want to settle in separately. The young woman then insists that she did say he needed a private office and study, and asks if the same applies to the bedroom. The guy then realizes that it's perfectly normal to use different spaces, and he thought she knew that. The guy also says that if she doesn't want to, then let her say so, because there are still a lot of rooms there, and the young lady claims that she understands everything, and it's also inconvenient when someone just goes off the rails with demands to change the furniture and divide it. After which the young man rises above the young lady, and the girl then, a little shocked, claims that her whole back hurts. The guy also claims that she did say that the problem was in the bed, after which she was having trouble, but the main character says that it wasn't in him either, and in general, this is only one reason. When morning comes, the girl claims that it is definitely time to get up, and the Duke suggests that she lie down because there is still plenty of time until morning, but the girl replies that no, not much, and also that she needs to check how Roger is coping with her assignment, and there are things to do in the company. The guy then says what she will do tomorrow, and the young lady claims that other things are planned for tomorrow, after which the Duke says what a meaningless world this is where you have to work so hard and no one even talks about a comfortable life. The young lady replies that in order to live comfortably tomorrow, she needs to work today, even though she cannot maintain a balance between work and personal life. The Duke then suggests that she leave everything to Carson, after which the main character finally sighs and agrees, and also asserts that today she will rest, and even if tomorrow she plunges into eternal sleep, then these are already problems for tomorrow. The man then asks if she will involve more people, and the young lady asks if there are many people she can trust, and if this is not an issue that can be resolved with money alone. The Delfords and the Klausners are different, and there aren't many qualified people there, even among the most loyal servants. The Delfords have almost no servants, and most of the talented graduates of the academy belong to other families or have sponsors, and without a patron, it is difficult to even establish their identity, because this is a world where blood ties decide everything. And also the place of birth and lying down one's own fame, and the majority of the most talented are easily able to steal a trade secret either for themselves or for their master. And in fact, they're spies, and finding someone like Roger is a stroke of luck. The blonde then insists that it would be best to rest and clear his head of all thoughts. The young lady claims that she simply doesn't like it, and the guy claims that then she could do some sports, to which the young lady replies that she feels like she's not training, but rather becoming a training bag. And he's just using her. But the guy then asks if it's time to call him something else, and the young lady claims that it makes her feel a bit awkward. After which the young man merely kisses her hand, and the main character is a little surprised. The young man then asks why she's so embarrassed, and the young lady replies that it doesn't matter. She also realizes that memories from 5 years ago have come flooding back, and they have long been forgotten due to alcohol. That day, she accidentally spilled a glass on her hand and tried to find a handkerchief, but the guy gave her his, and, just like the previous night, everything repeated itself. Now the young lady just tousles the guy's hair, and he looks at her in bewilderment, after which the girl understands that she wanted to take revenge on him, but he is so handsome even when he is disheveled. Then the girl turns around and insists that he is, in fact, an enemy of democracy. The guy asks what kind of nonsense that is, and the girl replies that she doesn't know. After which, the young man turns to her and tries to turn her face towards him. The young lady simply insists that when he gets up, he'll buy her clothes, but only if they're not made for someone else. So the young man agrees and says he'll buy the entire studio. The girl also offers to go together, after which the young man will remain silent about the main character asking him to answer. The Duke then says okay, and the young lady turns to him with a smile on her face. Meanwhile, Elliot just sulks and paces the room menacingly. He also claims that the aunt must have gotten lost somewhere, to which the nanny replies to the young master that no, and that she stayed with the Duke yesterday. The boy wonders if his aunt has stayed too long and fallen asleep, and the woman just smiles. The young man also screams that his uncle is bad because he offended everyone by making friends with him, and plays only with his aunt, and the nanny says that their young master is upset, but after that the young man only sulks. And then he runs out of the room and also screams at her not to laugh, because he hates her and Jenny too. The boy also slams the door, and the nanny then claims that he must be very angry. "Come on, I'm the maid," she says. But there's nothing to be done, since this is the first time the mistress has left the young master alone overnight. And sometimes, because of work, she couldn't put him to bed. But she never spent the night at home, and at the Baron's estate, she always received guests in her study. At this point, the boy asks if they really think they're getting rid of him. But he will scold his uncle, and will not let him take his aunt, and will also get angry at his aunt.